Very good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, sir. Thank you, sir. How are you, sir?
Good, good.
Chandrasekhar, sir, you are going to introduce for 1 or 2 minutes, sir, no? Chandrasekhar?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
ಹಲೋ ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ ಒಂದು ನಿಮಿಷ ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ.
Your face is not visible. Is in video is showing hand. Yeah, Usha madam, you sir is requesting to on video. Kalegoda sir, Jayadev sir, Girish sir, Rupa ma'am. Yeah, Seema ma'am, please turn on your video. Hitaishi, Jaydev, Gahan, Seema ma'am, Shivananjama, Keshav. Please turn on camera.
Excuse me, sir. Somik, sir.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, can we start or wait for a while, sir?
What do you recommend?
Total 26 members have joined.
Okay.
Another 5
Yeah,
minutes, can we wait, sir?
I'll leave it to you.
Okay, right, sir. Thank you.
Start at 9:05 sharp then.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Well, I guess while we're waiting, any comments on yesterday's session from anyone?
No comments in the box, sir, chat box.
Chandrasekhar, should we start?
Yes, sir. Chandrasekhar, sir. Chandrasekhar, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Please, sir is asking to start
Okay, right, ma'am. Right,
session.
ma'am.
Okay.
Very good morning to one and all present here. I welcome all of you to the second day of 3-day Dr. R. Venkataram International Lecture Series on the magic of probability and introduction to decision analysis. Greetings from the Bangalore Institute of Technology. On behalf of Rajya Vakkaligara Sangha, Bangalore Institute of Technology, I welcome today's resource person, Dr. Somik Raha. Of course, we're all knowing that Dr. Somik Raha is our alumni, distinguished alumni from Computer Science and Engineering Department. He has delivered number of seminars on decision making, and we are very much honored and opportunate to having you on this day, sir. Thank you very much for your acceptance and delivering the lecture for us for this 3 days. With this brief introduction, I like to hand over this session to Dr. Somik Raha. Sir, please continue with the same, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrasekhar. Again, it's a real pleasure to get this opportunity to talk to all of you about these topics. So today's topic is an introduction to decision analysis. And before I start, I want to do a really quick poll. So you'll see a poll on your screen. And would you please answer these 3 questions? For those of you who have not started the poll, please do start it. I can see 10 people, 11 people haven't started it. Oh, thumbs up. So I see only 10 completions. We have 23 people on the session. So 13 people, would you please finish the poll? We're just 5 minutes in. If you're not able to see the poll, please speak up. Waiting for 12 more people. Okay, 11.
ನಿಂದ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ ಕಳ್ಸೋದು ನೀವು ಮೊಬೈಲಿಂದ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು. ಮೊಬೈಲಿಂದ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಹಿಂಗೆಲ್ಲ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಲ್ಯಾಪ್ಟಾಪ್ ನಾವು ಅದೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು, ಮೊಬೈಲಿಂದ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಆಗೋದು. ಅದು ನಿನ್ನ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಅದು ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ನಿನ್ನ ಇಮೇಲ್ ಐಡಿ, ಫೋನ್ ನಂಬರ್,
Reddappa sir, please mute. Reddappa sir, please mute.
ಕಳ್ಸಿ.
Reddappa sir, please mute.
We still have no answer from 11 participants, 10 participants. So there are 10 people in this who are not, able to access the poll. Can you please try? Okay. We have 11 participants not able to access the poll. Okay, those who are not able to access the poll, can you speak up? Are you not able to see it? The 11 of you, half the session here. Just want to resolve the technical difficulty because we'll be doing a lot of polling going forward. Can you just put in the chat if you're not able to participate in the poll? We still have 12 people who cannot access. 13 people. Okay. We'll give it one more minute. So more than half the session is not able to, seems not to be able to engage with the poll. 15 out of 25 have finished. Oh, okay, it's 10 now. Okay. 17, 3 more. Okay. 2 are finishing up. Okay, we'll close the poll now. So it looks like we have 16 people who finished the poll. 8 people, I don't know, maybe you're struggling with the polling system, but we'll have more opportunities. So let me start by asking you this question. What is a decision? Everybody has to make a decision in their lives. What do you think is a decision? How do you know you have made a decision? I wanted you to type in your chat box. So please open up your chat box and write your answer to this question. What is a decision and how do you have made one? This is an interactive workshop, so if you notice, if you don't interact, this workshop will not move forward. So please, I'm going to just sit and wait for your answer. Okay, so it says then you can take action. Yay or nay? Ghan, you're giving a thumbs up. Can you write what is a decision according to you? And the question is, how do you know you made a decision? How do you know you've made a decision? I want everyone to put in their thoughts in the chat. So Duri Ramya says to select one of the options available. There are 24 people here. A conclusion or resolution reached after consideration, action or process we decide. Shah says when you have no confusion and feel calm, then you feel you've taken decision. Okay. Others? whenever you want to do something. Okay. Gahan, can you put in your answer as well? Action or process, deciding something or resolving a question. Others, when we stepped into the action, what we decide to do, depending upon action or process, taking proper steps, the ability or tendency to make decisions quickly, decisiveness. Okay. Okay. Any others? Says decisions follow action. Interesting. Okay. So I asked this question to students when we were planning stuff, and they gave answers. And there were some students who had this was either to perform some action or not. Okay. So if you look here, the students gave a little bit of circular logic. There were a bunch of them which says, well, making a decision is about when you've decided. That's like, okay, that doesn't answer the question. And another version is deciding to make an action. So it's like, okay, well, how do you know you made one? So all of these answers which have, the definition in the definition is a bit circular, doesn't tell you very much. Some people said decision is something which makes human think about the future. Some said it's about analysis and judgment, a situation in which one of the options has to be chosen, making a judgment after looking into the problem. And some of your answers are also along those lines. Then many of you talked about when you are at peace, I think one person said, when you feel calm. Usha madam said this. So clarity of action is another thing. Decision is something which once we take, we follow it, and before taking it, we should think all pros and cons. And I get to know it, and I can follow it, then I know I made a decision. And then there's folks who've said that it's about confidence. So my boxes, yeah. When we feel confident on any topic, then we can make decisions. The capability of making a wise choice and having a firm hold over it. That's the clarity there. And then there's a last group which also talked about outcomes. Selecting a course of action for the proposed statement or selecting a mode of action. How do you know you made a decision? Because the outcome establishes that a decision was made. Now, these are all very interesting answers. And if you needed the outcome to establish that a decision was made, that's a very problematic definition, because if I am deciding which drug to manufacture, so I make the decision today, and for the drug to get approved by the government, it takes and to be developed, it takes 10 years for any major drug. So that means it'll take you 10 years to agree that I made the decision to invest in it today. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? People see that? So using the outcome to say you made a decision is very problematic. Then here's another one. Decision makes my life go in a right path. That's also outcome oriented. Well, I made a decision, but it took me in the wrong path. Let's say I decided to take drugs. If I made that decision, it would have very, very devastating consequences for my life. And the fact is, I did make the decision. So, but it's not clear that it was a good one. So you can't use the fact that I'm on the right path or the wrong path to say that the decision was made. Now, many of you said it's based on the action or process. So let me see, can I get a volunteer to talk to? Can someone come off mute to be in dialogue with me? Let's see, who said this? Gahan, can you come off mute?
Yes, sir.
Am I saying your name correctly, Gahan AV?
Yes, sir.
So you said depending upon action or process, yes?
Yes.
So let's say I took the process and I said, okay, I'm thought about buying a new car, and I'm going to buy, let's say I've decided I want to buy a Mercedes-Benz luxury car. Would you agree I've made a decision? I tell you, I'm telling everybody here, I made the decision. Would you agree? I made a decision.
It's my own decision.
It's no, it's my own decision.
What do you mean? What do you mean it's your own decision? I've decided to buy a Mercedes Benz. Do you agree I have made a decision?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I've just changed my mind. I don't think I want a Mercedes Benz. I'm going to buy a Tesla. I just changed my mind. Do you think I've made a decision now?
It's about your action.
Oh, it's about my action. Okay, so say more about that. What about my action? How do you know I've made the decision?
Sorry, sir. Can you repeat again?
How do you know I have decided to buy a Tesla? First, I told you I want to buy a Mercedes. Then, when you said yes, I made a decision. And I said, no, I changed my decision. I'm going to buy a Tesla now. And so, how do you know I made a decision? You said it's about action. So, what are you looking for? How do you know Somik has made a decision to buy a Tesla? How do you know?
Maybe compare with Tesla and then Mercedes based
Yes.
on mileage, based on the what compared to the car money cost and also mileage. Based on that, you maybe switch on Tesla. This is maybe
Yeah. That's the analysis. I did all the analysis.
yeah.
I like the Tesla. It's fully electric,
Yeah.
great mileage, fantastic. It's also
Yeah.
affordable. Okay, I'm buying it.
Yeah.
So now, would you agree I made my decision?
Oh, that is your decision. What I feel that is your decision is based on your comfort. Anything, it's not say maybe it's not a thing to agree for your decision. That is my
No. How do you know I made a decision? That's the question. So
According to
how
your
do you know?
analysis and the judgment, whatever you have taken.
Okay, Hiteshi. So it's according to my analysis, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
now I've analyzed Tesla is very good, and I told you, hey, Hiteshi, I've decided to buy a Tesla. And you're like, okay, so make it decided. And then I said, no. I just changed my mind. I think the Mercedes is better. I like luxury cars, so I want Mercedes.
Mm.
So have I made the decision? By the way, you can see where I'm going with this. I can do this all day long. Every time you think I made a decision, I'll change my mind. So how
Yes,
do you
sir.
know I've really made a decision?
Once
How
you
do you
buy,
know?
then only we'll get to know whether you have made a
Aha,
decision or not.
aha. Once I buy, very good answer. Very, very good answer. So decision, I'm going to define it as an irrevocable allocation of resources. Very important definition, which means you will never get whatever you're putting in. There'll be something you will lose from your life. If you lose nothing, then it is not a decision. So me thinking and telling you I'm buying a Mercedes, I'm buying a Tesla, it's not a decision. But the moment I sign the dotted line in the dealership, then at that moment I made the decision. Because then if I change my mind, you know what the dealer will say? Anyone can guess? If I say, hey, I signed the dotted line for the Tesla, and I say, you know what? No, I don't want this Tesla anymore. I want to buy the Mercedes. What will the dealer say? You say, oh, I've got good prices for used cars. I'm willing to buy your used car, and I will lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
Do you follow? So this is a very important distinction that you cannot, if you are not going to lose anything, it is not a decision. And we usually lose resources like money. We also lose time. So if the question is how much time should I invest, then you're talking about how much time will you lose. And if the question is money, then yes, how much money will never come back to you. And if that is a fundamental definition of a decision. Like all of you decided to be here today, which means you will never be in any other place on the planet because you chose to be here. Okay, that is irrevocable. This time that you have given me is lost from your life. No one can give it back to you. I hope I'll make it worth your while, but that is a decision. Okay, so I just want to hear from you. How do you feel, Gahan? What do you feel about this definition? Can you come off mute, Gahan? Yes. What do you think about this definition? Oh, I can't hear Gahan. Anyone else wants to reflect? This is the foundation. So this is the time you can ask me questions and challenge it before I go forward.
No, it means a decision need not be taken as always final. It has got its own probability of taking it forward or keeping it in abeyance. So decision is at that moment, it is a decision made based on the probabilities we are having in our mind. And that probability can change at any time and we will go to another decision. This is, I feel, what is the meaning of decision.
So that's interesting. There is no probability so far that I've talked about. When I've decided to buy a Tesla, there is absolutely no conversation on probability.
Yes,
I
we don't know.
bought it.
Yes.
No, I know because I signed the contract. There is no question of probability.
No,
I signed the deal. I
you
made
are
a
having
commitment.
all the data, you are taking a decision at that point.
Yeah.
You felt it is
Yes.
okay. And the decision is based on the data at that point you are having, and you are taking analysis. Suppose analysis is also not perfect. Again, analysis is
Correct.
also having probability. And
Yep.
you feel that there is another way of looking at it, and you will change the probability. Even if it 98 becomes 97, you don't mind it. 98, you felt it is nice. But another analysis shows it is 97% probability of good. You don't mind 97. You have got another reason to say 97 is better than 98. Then you can always do that. That's what I feel.
But that's you're making a different point. But do you follow the point that if I change my analysis and I change my mind and I don't lose anything, then it's not a decision. It's just analysis. The decision is when, suppose you said, oh, okay,
No, you said
you have
decision can
some.
be changed also. You said the decision you are changing. Why you are changing the decision? I'm just telling the point.
No, you up to the point of analysis, you can change your decision, but it's a decision. So let me be clear. If you have made a decision, you have invested something that you will never get back. That is the definition I'm trying to establish. If you don't lose anything, if you keep changing your mind, you don't lose anything. Like I was jumping between Tesla and Mercedes. That's cheap. I'm not losing anything. That is not a decision. Saying, oh, this probability is higher today than that, and yeah, I can real decision. But if I have lost something that I will never get back, that is a decision. So this is a very important point. So let's make sure that this is really clear.
No, that is always true. When you take a probability, 98% probability, 2% you are lost. It is always the case.
But I don't understand where probability is coming up in your mind.
No, that's
If
what
I'm
I'm
listening
thinking.
to the example,
Because when I'm making decision, I'm making my plus and minus points in my mind. Okay.
Yeah.
I have taken 70% plus, I decided. But I find 30% also has got some points which I don't mind losing 70 and going to one of those 30%, I will take it. So this is also possible in a decision taking I'm taking.
I think I know what you're talking about. Hold on to that thought. We need one more distinction to have this dialogue with you, sir. So just hold on to that thought. I think I understand what you're trying to say. Other people, what how do you relate to this definition of decision that you will lose something from your life which you will never get back? If you don't, it is not a decision. It's just thinking. Thinking, analysis, all that is fine, but it's not a decision. Anyone?
Maybe new data you might have got to take a decision.
No, you can get new data, but
Yes.
just hold on to that. I think we need a new distinction for what you're describing. That's not this conversation. This conversation is simply saying that if you have made a decision, you have put down something that you will never get
Naturally,
back. Like
it is
right now,
natural.
yeah,
It is natural.
that's correct. That's all I'm saying for now. What you're saying
natural.
is a different point. I will get to your point in the very next point will be that. But this point is just about what is a decision? It's an irrevocable allocation of resources. That's it. Yeah.
Fine.
Others? Everyone okay with this so far? You can give me a thumbs up emoji. There's an emoji in your WebEx. You can give a thumbs up. Okay, I see the thumbs up. Okay, good. I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to give you another poll to think about. Forward. So I've got 4 statements here that I want you to think about. The first one says, and I want you to think about which ones you disagree with, and then mark how many you disagree with. The economic devastation caused by the COVID lockdown points to a bad decision. The second one says, the lives saved by the COVID lockdown points to a good decision. The third one says the Chandrayaan-2 orbiter crashed on the lunar surface, which proves the launch decision was a bad one. And the fourth says we need to see the mistakes in classification to know if our ML algorithms made a good decision. Made the right decision, I think is what it says. Yeah. So 4 things. How many do you disagree with? Please fill the poll. Eight people have filled the poll, 45 are there, 37 people to go. So go ahead, take your time. Thirty-one people haven't started. 30 people, please start taking it. Twenty-seven people, please go ahead, take the poll.
No, you're not given agreeing part. All you have put disagree, disagree, disagree. You should have given one more choice for agreeing.
No, agree means suppose you agree with one of them and you don't agree with the other 3, then you will pick I disagree with 3. If you agree with 2 of them, then you say I disagree with 2. If you agree with all
I
of
agree
them,
with all the 4. Then what? There is no poll at all.
You are correct. You are correct. There isn't that option. Then just don't give the answer. That's fine. I should have put one more. You're right. And just put in the chat, if you're in that category, put in the chat, I agree with all 4 statements. Then I'll know you're in the no answer. So 19 out of 44 have finished. We're still waiting for more than half of you. And Dr. Rajamani, if you agree, no, only Dr. Satish agrees. Okay. What are half the room doing? 46 people, please we take the poll, I'm going to close it soon. "25 seconds more. Please." Only 19 people have finished. It's, I guess, 21. Yeah. Thank you for that comment, Dr. Rajamani. Okay. So here we go. This is what everybody said. I think you can see the results there. So the first principle of decision analysis is the distinction between decisions and outcomes. And that principle says that you cannot judge a decision from the outcome. Okay, I'll say that again. You cannot judge the to make it a little bit verbose. You cannot judge the quality of a decision from the quality of the outcome. So why is that? Let me give you a little example here. Let's say I choose to drive sober. I reach home safe. Okay, that's a good decision and a good outcome. Now I could choose to drive drunk and crash. That's a bad decision and a bad outcome. I could choose to drive drunk, but I still reach home safe. That doesn't make my decision a good one. It's still a bad decision. I got lucky. It's a good outcome. And I can drive sober and still crash. That's a good decision with a bad outcome. So this is a very foundational way to understand the difference between decisions and outcomes. And the outcome does not make the decision a good or a bad one. So if I go back to these statements, the very first one, the economic devastation caused by the COVID lockdown points to a bad decision. Not necessarily, because in fact, with Dr. Rajamani's point, it depends on what people were looking at when they made the decision. In fact, but the one reason why everybody should have disagreed with this is because I'm using the outcome, the economic devastation. This is precisely what I'm using to say the decision was a bad one. That is a violation of the principle I just talked about. You cannot judge the quality of a decision from the quality of the outcome. So I would have liked for everybody to have disagreed with this one. Then we go to the next one. The lives saved by the COVID lockdown points to a good decision. Again, lives saved by the COVID lockdown is an outcome. And we are pointing to the lockdown as a decision because the lives were saved. Again, even though it's positive, it's the same mistake all over again. So I would disagree with B too. Then if you look at C, the Chandrayaan 2 orbiter crashed on the surface. This is an outcome. And I'm using it to judge the actual launch decision. Again, a mistake of the principle. So I would disagree with this one also. And here you say we need to see the mistakes in classification, which are the outcomes, to know if ML algorithm made the right decision. ML algorithm is actually working as an agent for us, and it applies, like what applies to us humans should apply to the algorithms that are our agents. So no, you can't judge the quality of the decision from the quality of the outcome. It depends on what you knew at the time you set the algorithm. So all four I would disagree with. And so I mean, you had the right ideas, but pretty much I think only two people disagreed with all four. Everybody else disagreed with some combination of these. So let me pause and open the floor for dialogue. How do you relate to this principle that you cannot judge the quality of a decision from the quality of the outcome? This is foundational. By the way, I'll give you one example. Somebody who took the class before taking the, she shared this revelation that before taking decision analysis, she would say, look, I made a bad decision getting married. My marriage ended in a divorce. after taking decision analysis, she now says, I made a good decision to get married, and then I made a good decision to get divorced because information had changed in that gap. Right. And that was, I think, what Dr. Rajamani was pointing to, that your decision can change. I would just correct the language. Your decision cannot change. It's just a new decision. And I think he was also saying that it's a new, once you made the decision, there's a new decision. So you could change course. You don't have to stay stuck to the course you were on, but the decision is a new one. And having that precise language allows us to avoid these traps of decisions versus outcomes. So let me pause here. I think there are some controversial ideas in here. Let's make sure that we are on board before we build on this. I'm happy to call on people if people are not feeling shy. Don't feel shy. Hitesh, do you have any comments? Want to come off mute? Are people around? Hitesh, if you're muted, we can't hear you. Or Dr. Rajamani, do you want to comment?
No, fine.
Dr. Satish?
Sir, carry on. I'm just getting used to it. Carry on.
Okay. Anyone, any reflections? This is a pretty profound idea. By the way, when I first heard this principle, I went to the professor and said, Professor, this is what we learn as kids in India, that you cannot judge in our spiritual traditions, that you should not judge your decision from the outcome. You should focus on the right action, but don't worry too much about the outcome. Just the outcome will be what it'll be. And his response was, yes, but your traditions have not worked out how to use this in finance, and here we worked out the details. So that just blew my mind. It's like, wow, this is great. Suddenly, because if you think about it, you get into a job, right? On the one hand, Indian tradition will say this, that focus on making good decisions, don't worry about outcome. But then you get a job, what are you rewarded for? Your bonus, your promotion comes from good outcomes. So there's a very big contradiction. It's like, wait, are we rewarding people for good decisions or good outcomes? And how can you tell the difference? And it's very easy to reward people for good outcomes because everybody can see the outcome, but very, very few people can see the process that you use to make the decision and reward you for that. And that takes a lot of hard work, and we are not investing enough in rewarding people for making good decisions. That's a really big problem all over the world, and something that if we change, then we build great cultures. So before I move forward to the next principle, any comments? Sojan, are you there? Cold call.
No,
You're able to talk.
say we
I am
take
here.
decision. Hello.
Yes, any comments?
I got one point here. See, we take
Yeah.
decision, we go ahead. Okay. And we
Yeah.
wish it to be good only, the final outcome. Good means what we expect. But we know, no, we have taken decision based on our whatever we are having. Then we know it has not worked like that in some parts. Also, we find out why it has not worked. Then we move forward. So, what do you say about this kind of thinking?
Right. So I'm giving you special words to describe what you're trying to express. So when you made a decision, the decision's done. Nothing that happens from that point on will decide the quality of the decision. Okay. You can judge the decision quality only before you made the decision,
Correct.
not after.
Yes.
After you made the decision, whatever happens, we are going to use the word outcome for it, not decision.
Okay.
That is the outcome.
Okay.
Right, and now you can make a new decision. You're, of course, everybody should learn from what happened and make better decisions going forward, but the difference is that's an outcome, and before you pull the trigger on the action,
Okay.
that's you judge the quality of the decision from the process. But once you made the decision, it's gone. Now it's all outcome land. That's the key point.
Fine.
Okay, thank you for asking that. Sojan, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think this view
is very liberating because it stops you from looking back, and you're always, okay, that decision is gone and done. Let me look at new information. Let me move forward, right? So yeah, this is for me.
No, we should not say we should not
liberating.
look back. Can I say we should not say we should not look back? No, looking back also gives us some more, data. Why, that, again, direction or something like that. So past is also required. That is also part of the data we are having.
So,
Go forward.
so let's be. So I think what Sojan is trying to say is you're liberating yourself from regret. What getting past data is useful for the next decision. But what Sojan is saying is liberating because most people they have regret. Oh, I made a bad decision, and you keep beating yourself. What he's saying is no, you may have made a perfectly good decision, but you got a really bad outcome, and you don't have to beat yourself with a stick for that. You can be, what this language is letting you say is I made a perfectly good decision and I got a really bad outcome, and that gives you the freedom to focus on your next decision. It's a very important point Sojan's making. And Dr. Rajavan, you're making a different point, and I will get to that in the next principle. But Sojan, did I get your point correctly?
Yeah, perfectly correct. Thank you.
Okay. That's a really important point. You don't want to lead a life of regret. This principle is primarily there to eliminate regret from our lives. We have no place for regret. Okay. So now, since most of you have attended the workshop yesterday, I'm going to show you these probability distributions. So if you see something like this, would you agree that so I've got these two distributions. This is the distribution A, and this is the distribution B. And you can see that the profile is such that the distribution B is a little bit to the right of the distribution A, which means that in general, there's a higher probability of a better outcome on this side, but it's not guaranteed, right? So you could choose B, and then you find that A gives you better result, but you didn't pick it, so you don't get it, and you are stuck with a lower result from B. It could happen. Now, if I were to say, wait, put only the Kannada version. What was my English version here? Okay, this is a funny moment. Let me see. Give me a moment.
No, you are showing for second, little higher probability at the peak. Is it right,
Yep.
or it is?
Yeah, it's a little bit higher probability that if you look at the
At the peak
cumulative
point.
distribution. Yes. Now, when I was, sorry. When I was translating this is funny. It's all I have to read and say what I wrote here. I think I'm saying that B is better than A, but if it could happen that you get a worse outcome through B than through A, and so you made a bad decision. Could you say that? Would you say that? Would you be able to agree with that?
Come again?
Would you agree with this statement? I think this is saying,
You agree with
to
the
the best of
following?
my knowledge. Yeah.
He is more than English na ಬರ್ರಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುದಲ್ಲ.
I forgot to put the English in. No, I can't read it myself. So maybe somebody can read this and
We are
translate it.
more used to thinking in phrases in English.
I think this is saying that if B is greater than A, and you pick B, but you get a worse result from B
It
because
is
it's
possible
probabilistic.
because the curve is
Yeah.
showing that way. See, A
Overlap.
curve,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. There's overlap. So now
Yeah,
if I
overlap.
say, hey,
Yeah.
you made a bad decision by selecting B because see A gave a better result, how would you would you agree with that? So go ahead and take the poll. I've opened the poll here.
It depends upon the output we are taking. Say, suppose if I take 0.3, A decision is better. 0.3 crore is sufficient for me. I am okay with A curve. Suppose I want to know, because probability is lower
wait.
there.
That's not the question. The question is, if you picked B and you got a lower output from B than A, would you agree that you made a bad decision?
No. It is based on there is nothing we can do about it. If we know this curve, we agree that it is possibility is also there. If we know this curve earlier.
So do you agree? So you don't agree with the question? Then mark no in the poll. I'm just waiting for people to finish the poll. Please go ahead and take it. And for those who don't read Kannada, this is saying that, hey, if B is greater than A, and so you pick that as the decision, but you got a worse result from that because it's probabilistic, it's not guaranteed, and A did better. Would you now say that you made a bad decision going with B? If you agree, say yes. If you disagree, say no.
That means we should keep always this curve in our mind whenever we take a decision. For any decision, we should have this point. This is a possibility. So suppose if I take A is fine, good. Within certain limits, it is fine. And B may be better in some limits. So this is all we have to look at it correctly. And because these curves are like that only.
So
I'm taking these points, in my work also, I'm telling you.
Yeah. No, I hear you. We're getting there. So this is saying that even though B is greater than A, in probabilistically, it's not guaranteed. So it wouldn't be a good decision to pick B. And only 5 agree. I would say that sentence. So let me just make sure that I have the translation correct here. The sentence is saying B greater than A is not guaranteed, so choosing B is not a good decision. Is that what you responded to, everybody? I think that's what you responded to, right? So I don't agree with this. I would have preferred if everybody selected no, because just to what Dr. Rajamani is saying, even though it's not guaranteed, it's the right decision to make because it increases your odds of doing better. So that's a very important point. Even though this feels very philosophical, it really is very practically oriented. Like when you're facing, as you said, when you are facing these deals, you may have these probability distributions in your mind, and he's been talking a lot about that. So in my view, B is the right decision to make if you see a curve like this, even though it's not guaranteed, and A can give you better results. So this is a pretty important way in which the probability conversation we were having yesterday intersects with the decision conversation today. And sorry, I got the translation kind of interfered with it. So I don't know if I confused people with the question there. So let me pause here. Some people are writing in chats. This is now reflection depends on so many factors. Sorry. Any comments? Anybody finds, so many of you picked yes. Anybody who picked yes wants to talk about it? Everybody should have picked no. And Vijendra, thank you so much for putting the Karmanyavadikaraste shloka. That's exactly what I was referring to. Any comments? Well, 13 of you picked yes. Can somebody talk about why you picked yes? Someone who picked yes? Thirteen of you. I want somebody to speak. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please. I'm just waiting for you. Who's the 13 of you who picked yes? I just want to make sure we hear from you. Yes, I can even see who picked yes. Tejaswini, Dr. Dhananjay, Manjunath, Dr. Satish, anybody? Anushri, any of these folks, please turn mute off and talk.
Sorry, sir. Question understanding was wrong. I joined a bit late here. Understanding the question was wrong.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, if everybody's got that, then I'll move on. Okay, so I'm going to give you another poll. Now I'm going to the next principle. So take a look at this set of questions. Which ones of the following statements do you consider to be faulty logic? The first one says, I'm in a tough relationship but can't walk out because of all the years I have put in. The second one says, I have already put in so many years into this relationship, hence can't invest any more. It's the opposite of the first one. The third one says, I don't want to fund this project anymore since we've already invested 2 years into it. And the last one says, I have put in so many years into this career, I can't walk away from it now. Okay, so let's take the poll. How many of these do you disagree with? And if you agree with all of them, just put in the chat, I agree with all. We have 52 people. Please keep going quickly. See. Well, people have done it. One person in progress. Please go ahead and fill it out. 13, one to go. Okay, 14 people filling. Please let's fill the survey in quickly. $15, yeah, very good, very good. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. All right, so let's look at this. So the second principle of decision analysis is it's called the sunk cost principle. The past matters for learning, not for accounting. And if you apply this, let's look at that first one. I'm in a tough relationship but can't walk out because of all the time I have put into it. This, all the years you've put into it has nothing to do with the decision in front of you. That's gone. That time that you put into a relationship will never come back. So whenever you're using your inputs of accounting, like, oh, I put in this much, and so I can't put any more, it's a mistake of logic. the relationship continuing is based on what you know today. It has nothing to do with how much time you put in. Okay, that's gone. Then second one is making the same mistake. I already put in so many years. That is irrelevant. How many years you put, and hence I can't put any more. No, that's not correct. Also, whether you can put or not depends on what you know today and what you want today. It doesn't have any connection with how much you put in. Third one is I don't want to fund this project anymore because we already put in 2 years into it. How many years you put into it is completely irrelevant. It depends on the deal that you're facing today. And this comes up often in projects where, oh, I've sunk 2 years now. Do you trust the engineer? The engineers say, hey, it was a difficult project, but we worked everything out. Now, let's say you put, 1 crore investment initially, and it was lost. Like it took 2 years, you figure it out. They come back and say, hey, give me another half a crore, and this will succeed, and you will make 1 crore. Now in your mind, you're doing the accounting. Hey, I already put 1 crore. This people are asking me for half a crore more. So I would have put in 1.5, but how much will I get back? I'll get 1. So I'm going to lose half a crore. If you think like this should be a joke. Everybody should start laughing. Oh, Somik is violating the sunk cost principle, because the deal is not about the 1 crore I already put in. That's gone. It'll never come back to me. The moment I put in that investment, it's gone. The new decision is give us half a crore. I'll double your money and give you 1 crore. That's a great deal. If anybody can double your money, you should take it, provided you believe them. You might say, hey, these are the same engineers who said it last time. I don't believe them. That's fine. So you can use for the past for learning, but not for accounting. And similarly, you put in so many years into this career, you can't walk away now. How many years you put into your career is totally irrelevant. And whether you want a new career depends on your preferences, your values, and your abilities, and all the situation at hand. It has nothing to do with how many years you put in. So 4 things, and I can see that 6 people did disagree with all 4 of you. Got the hint from the previous survey. But yeah, let me pause. Let me open up the floor. Let's see. Let me cold call. I know Sojan won't mind. Sojan, you want to share any reflections? Sojan, you there? Maybe
Sorry, unmuting takes a bit longer for some reason. Yeah, I'm here, but
Alright.
no, nothing, nothing to add. Samik, completely agree with this. Makes sense. I walked away from my career of 15 years, so I know what you mean.
That's right. That's right. Sojan is doing something very remarkable. I hope you'll come to one of these lecture series and talk about it. Okay. Go ahead, Sojan. You were going to say? No. Okay.
No, nothing.
Okay. Other people? Dr. Rajamani, you want to add any comments?
No, fine. Good.
Other people, anybody wants to say anything?
Language is a tough, Actually, sometimes we don't know what the words mean also. So it is sometimes fuzzy, like a fuzzy thing, decision we take and we go ahead and
Yeah.
we know. Yeah, this is also a issue that it cannot be black and white for me many times.
No, that's true. That's why we're introducing some very sharp distinctions here. That we're giving principles, because decision making tends to be fuzzy. And we want to take the fuzziness out of it and understand the principles that we don't want to violate.
Yeah,
Like these are obvious principles, right? Now it's still difficult. I will talk about how to make good decisions in a bit, but these are the obvious mistakes people make, and we want to get them out of the way first. So decisions and outcomes, separating the two is fundamental.
Exactly correct.
And then, yeah, right. And then sunk cost, no, how much time you put has no relevance to anything. It's about how much what you learned.
Yeah, that is
right.
And many times
Anybody
management doesn't look like that.
That's right. But then that's why I'm teaching
But
this
they
course.
don't know that, by spending so much of time and money, they have
Yeah.
made that, team more competent to take proper decision in future.
Correct.
They should know that what the team is like. They should know that management, whether they are honestly doing or dishonestly doing. It cannot be completely mathematical also, I think.
That's right. There's a lot of intuition in the game. We'll talk about all of that in just a bit. But these are fundamental things. And the reason I'm spending so much time on it is I want to live in a
Good one.
right.
We
I
have
want
to
to
go
live in a
like this
world.
only. We have to take these
Yeah,
points also in the picture. Always correct.
yeah.
Because we cannot
I
be
want to
always
live
on the fuzzy side. Fuzzy also ends up in some decision only. You have to take using probability.
right. And so once we are clear, like I want to live in a world where anybody makes these mistakes, we'll all laugh saying, "Oh, you
No,
made a
you should
good
not
joke,"
laugh at all.
right?
Should not laugh at any decision by anybody.
No. If somebody's making these mistakes of these principles, we should. I'm proposing that we should laugh, saying, "Hey, you violated the sunk cost principle. You're joking, right?" We
Yes,
should be
yes.
able to say that,
Correct.
right?
Yes. Good
That's the
one. Good
idea.
one. Good points are coming.
Yeah. Okay. So then we get to the all-important question: how do we judge decision quality? And there is a very powerful framework which we call the 6 elements of decision quality. And this was created initially by my teacher, Professor Ronald Howard at Stanford University. And I'll show you other forms of it too in a moment. But his version of it was to show, he highlighted the decision maker, which is you and me, very visually. So you have the decision maker sitting on a 3-legged stool, and the 3 legs of the stool are alternatives, which is what can you do, then information, which is what do you know, and preferences, which is what do you want, preferences or values. And it's sitting on this ground, which we call the frame of the decision. And the 3 legs are the basis of the decision. They're called the decision basis. And you integrate them with the seat of the stool, which is logic. And the decision maker is ultimately the one who's got to make the decision, has to be committed to action. So this is the 3-legged stool metaphor of decision quality. I want to talk about each of the 6 elements in great detail, but this is a quick way of visualizing it. Then an organization called the Strategic Decisions Group took the same thing and they turned it into a chain. And the visual principle here is that you are as good, you are as strong as your weakest link in the chain. So do you have an appropriate frame for the decision? Do you have creative, doable alternatives? Do you have meaningful, reliable information? Do you have clear values and trade-offs? Do you have logically correct reasoning? And do you have commitment to action? So they added this one that, hey, you can do all the analysis in the world, but if you're not committed to action, what's the point? And their idea was, by showing it as a chain, if you have a weak link that can break, that's the limiting quality of the decision. So you need to focus on that. And they wrote a book called Decision Quality, and inviting you to read it. You'll get something good out of it. So that's their framework, and it's contributed a lot in improving our thinking. Then after 20 years of that, um, this is an older company I used to work at called SmartOrg, and we introduced this. We broke the framework in 2 dimensions, head and heart, said that it's not just about, if you look at all the original framework, it felt like cool head, but there's also the warm heart in it. So we're looking at frame with useful perspective, meaningful inquiries, alternatives is distinct directions and interesting possibilities, and so on. I'll go into these pieces in detail. And it was visualized as a radar diagram, so you can show where you are from 0 to 100%, how strong are you on each of these, and you can draw a line and it'll tell you which one is weak, and you can focus on that. There's a little course here on decision quality that you can take to go deeper into this, and I invite you. There's a free course. So this is the one that I am going to use today. So I really like Professor Ron Howard's visualization of the decision maker sitting on a stool. And I also like where we evolved from SDG to SmartOrg, and breaking it by cool head and warm heart. And that's what I'm going to use. And so we're going to dive into each of these elements in detail. I have a Kannada version here, which I'll leave behind. I really think it's important for us to come up with the right labels and distinctions. But I can only my expertise in this is Google Translate, and I think you, the faculty here has a contribution to make. So you can take this and you can improve it and make it right. So I'll be using the English version for the rest of this workshop. So one change that I did was, along with David Matheson from SmartOrg, we changed the seat of the stool from logic to integration to say that it's more than just logic, it's also a narrative. And on the preferences, we broadened it to values with talking about trade-offs and purpose. So we'll go through each one. So let's start with the most important one, framing. And it's about useful perspectives and meaningful inquiries. So I'm going to say that framing a decision is itself an act of authorship. And what I mean by that is oftentimes you get into a meeting, people are just talking. And suddenly somebody says, is there a decision here? Can we make a, and suddenly the conversation becomes very, very clear, very sharp and focused. Because decision, as I've defined, is an irrevocable allocation of resources. Now you're at stake. Now you have to put in your money on the table, your time on the table, your commitment. Now the conversation becomes very, very different. So framing and calling out a decision is an act of authorship, which you get to do. Say, let's make a decision here. And that is how we change the future. We influence the future. So framing is a very fundamentally important act. And I have a very important tool to talk about here that allows us to engage in the framing conversation. And it is called the decision hierarchy. But before I jump into it, the purpose of this tool is to allow us to touch both the head and the heart. Now, I want to give you a quick, I've taught this class many times to children as well, like children in schools and older children actually. And once I was teaching it to seventh graders, and one kid, I asked them, what kinds of decisions are you struggling with? So they have two kinds of decisions usually. One is homework, and the second is uh, this kid wanted to figure out if he should date somebody or not. And so if you look at that question, should I ask someone out on a date? Is it a useful perspective and is it a meaningful inquiry? So if you say useful perspective, asking someone out on a date, if you it's a philosophical question. If you say yes, you don't know what to do next. It's not rooted in action. So to root it in action, you would have to ask a question like, where and when should I ask this person out on a date? That's an action-oriented question. Now, meaningful is, should I really go on a date? What am I interested in? I'm interested in finding people who share the same values. Well, if that's what you're interested in, maybe you can go find a project that speaks to your values and you will meet other people who have similar values. And maybe you really didn't want to go on a date, you just wanted to make friends who share values. And that completely changes the frame, the original question of the decision. So now that's, of course, when you're talking to children, these things come up. Now, when you're talking in the professional context, you have different kinds of decisions. And so I ran a survey uh, with students before when I was designing this course, and one of the questions was, what what campus interviews should I sit for? So I'm going to be using that as an example. And this framework, what it does is it breaks the decision into three pieces. It says that, look, let's start with the decisions you've already made. What are your commitments in your givens? And then in the middle is the question is, what do we need to figure out now? And in the future is, what do we need to figure out later? So what have you committed to? What do you need to focus on right now? And what can you defer for now? And the reason you're doing it is it takes some of the complexity out, because if you try to boil the ocean, try to solve every problem at once, we're going to fail. So we need to be able to clear up our thinking on what is an important decision, but not for now. What do we need to do now that will shape the future decision? And that's this piece here, using time as the construct. And in the top, we're using values as the construct. What have we already committed to? We're on principle, this is what we're doing. So our values come very much into our givens and also past decisions. So we'll talk about it. So I'm going to use a little role play here. And I'm going back to 20 years back when I was an on-campus student, and I had to grapple with the same question every student had to grapple with. Which on-campus companies should I apply to? And this is sitting in the context of you can get first, the first company, any company you can sit for, and once you get through, then you can apply for a second one, and that is your dream job. And once you get it, you're done. Now, the only now there's a couple of wrinkles in there which we'll talk about. So, so I have one Somik here from 20 years back, and I'm going to use a second Somik, which is Somik's inner friend from 20 years back, who will help Somik think through this. And there's also Somik, the workshop instructor, and I'll jump out of the role play to give you more context. So here we start this conversation as a chat, and you can imagine this chat can even happen on your cell phone, and the friend is talking, and so the inner friend asks, "So what are you really worried about, Somik?" Somik says, "Well, I don't want to waste the opportunity." Well, and how would it be wasted? Well, I could get an offer I don't really want, and then have only one shot at a dream role. Now, see, this is a really important point. If you're, initially everybody's afraid, oh, what if I don't get anything? I better try everywhere. And then it turns out you get it your first shot, and then you're like, oh shoot, this company, I really don't want this company, but now I've wasted one opportunity. That's a big problem. So, friend asks, well, would you agree that you're committed to only getting offers in companies that you're interested in? So yes, Somik says yes. Well, let's frame your decision with the decision hierarchy. What does it look like? So now the workshop instructor, Somik, is talking to you. The given here says will not apply to companies that are not interesting to me. And the current decision is which on-campus companies should I apply to? So let's keep going. So the inner friend asks, well, what areas are you ready to eliminate? Somik says, well, I don't want to work on Y2K problems. Now, I've got my workshop instructor hat on. Let me give you all some context. Now, I think everybody here remembers the Y2K bug, where data fields in a database were severely affected because nobody anticipated computers would last so long, and we had 2 digits for the year, and this would cause chaos in massive systems. So a lot of people in my generation got hired to work on this database problem. So okay, so if Somik's saying I don't want to work on Y2K problems, okay, let's add that in to the frame. So my given was will not apply to companies hiring for Y2K roles. I was pretty clear about that. So what does that do to my decision, my current decision? So which on-campus company should I apply to? Here I've got these companies A through J, and I'm going to eliminate these 5 companies because they are focused on Y2K. So that's the workshop instructor speaking, and like that's what we did. Like that's how you use this tool. Okay, so let's keep going. So how does this look? Somik says, well, it's good to eliminate some alternatives. Well, let's keep going. What are you interested in? Somik says, artificial intelligence. Well, I don't think any of these companies are doing artificial intelligence, Somik. Right, but if they care about innovation, maybe they will make the space. Maybe I can convince them. So that means, looks like innovation is another given for you. Absolutely. Okay, just curious, how would you know if the company is open to innovation? Well, I would look at their track record in building products. Okay, so let's add that in as a given. So my third given is will only apply to companies that build products, not just doing outsourcing projects. So all right, what does that do? It eliminates some more companies. So now I'm down to just 3 companies that I can apply to. Okay, that's wonderful. So how does this feel, Somik? And Somik says, oh, this is really helpful. But now I don't have too many alternatives. I just have 3 companies to apply to. Right. Okay, let's talk about that. Are you limited to only placement cell opportunities? Not at all. I want to keep looking for all AI opportunities that I can find. Okay, so let's mark that as another given. So here I have another given, which is we'll keep looking for AI opportunities off campus. And because I did that, let's change the current decision. So it's not just which on-campus companies, it's also the off-campus companies that are doing interesting work in my areas that I want to be in. So suddenly I have a lot of alternatives which are more relevant. Okay, so now let's talk about your future decision. What do you think it is? And Somik says, well, I think it is when should I stop looking and accept an offer? That's a pretty important decision. Like, how long do you want to keep looking? Okay, let's add that in. When should I stop looking and accept an offer? So I just went through this whole process where in the beginning it was very fuzzy and unclear, and this dialogue allowed me to get a very clear frame in this decision. So this has, so I want to just get your reflections from this dialogue. What is coming up for you? Please type in the chat or get off mute and talk, and do both. I'm inviting everybody who's active here. Please type in chat. What did you take from this? I want to read. And you're also welcome to come off mute and talk. Maybe to get someone started. Sojan, do you want to say anything? Sojan, yeah, he's here.
Well, you have to ask yourself a lot of questions and dig deeper.
Yeah. So I framed this just to keep it safe here with me and myself. So, but it doesn't have to be. It could be your close friend. So if people who are taking this workshop can be this inner voice, and the outer voice, not the inner voice, and you can help ask these kinds of questions to draw out the givens. What have you truly committed to, and what is your current decision, and what can you defer? So the intention which I'm showing this tool is we can help each other, and indeed, when you're in the middle of a tough decision, you do need a sounding board. So the person who's listening, this is a great framework for that person. It's also a great framework for you to talk to yourself, like how do I separate things out and have this inner conversation. It can be used in both ways. The chat is totally quiet. I'm waiting for people before moving on. Chat, voice. Rupa madam, want to comment anything? Yeah, we can hear you, Rupa madam. Go ahead. No. Here.
I'm thinking.
Oh, thinking. Okay. Anybody else? Shashikala madam. This is a pretty big tool, so I want to make sure I hear from some voices here. Hiteshi, do you want to share anything? Dr. Vidya? What are you taking away from this?
I think we should become aware of such thinking process should be there in our mind. This is a good idea. This gives a how to go about making a decision properly based on somebody had done a proper study of all this decision making and giving us a route. So I think it is good to have such information of taking decision in orderly manner. I think that way this is a good one.
Thank you for those comments. See, one thing I want you to notice is look at the word warm heart and cool head. Where is that coming up? So warm heart is coming up with what is important to me. And you can see that I was interested at that time very much in artificial intelligence. So that is reflected in my givens. That it's and that's what makes this decision very meaningful. That hey, wait a second, why am I limiting myself to just on campus? It's not just the placement cell's job. I am responsible for my career, and I have to own that decision. So off campus is also important. And in fact, funnily enough, I did the on campus placements, but I also was looking out and I saw an ad, a small ad in the Times of India at that time for somebody who wanted computer vision engineers, and I was researching computer vision at that time. So I applied and I got through, and that's where I went. My first job was in Japan with this startup doing officially computer vision. Of course, some interesting things happened after that. I ended up in a different startup, but that's how my career, my decision making worked. And that alternative came because I had this as a given, right? And then the cool head part is, I don't want to do silly things like applying everywhere. And the reason it's actually not just silly, it's dangerous because there are ethical consequences to a lack of clarity. And let me talk about that as well. A lot of my friends who hadn't thought through this, they applied to the Y2K companies, and there were other people who didn't want to get in. And the thing is, they got selected, and now a whole bunch of people got selected because the demand was great, and so they have to come for the interview. And so some of them didn't show up because they knew that if they get through, they've lost their one opportunity. That created a very big problem for the placement center. And I was the placement cell coordinator at the time. And with Ashwath sir, we decided to issue a punishment for them. They lost a couple of opportunities because of that, because that was very irresponsible behavior. And then there were still others who realized that they will get in trouble by not showing up. So they showed up and they deliberately made a mockery of the interview and answered, every question wrong. And except that, you can't fool people. I mean, the company was very upset. They told Ashwath sir, like, what is this? Why are your students behaving like this? And it had a very bad effect because it spoils the relationship for everybody else. There are many people who wanted Y2K jobs. So what these students did was, with their thoughtless decision making, harmed the interest of the other students, especially for the future batches, and also for that batch. So there are very big ethical consequences for not being clear about our decision making, and this is a very good example where both pieces come up. You pause here for reflections. There's a bit of BIT history in this as well. Any comments? I know the Dr. Redappa is here. Dr. Redappa, you're a placement officer. Let's hear from you. Oh, Dr. Redappa is not here? Oh, looks like he's not here right now. Oh, well. Oh, he's here. Dr. Redappa, you're here, I see. Can you unmute? Madam, is Dr. Redappa around?
Can't see whether Redappa attending or not because I'm not a host or co-host. Chandrasekhar only, sir, knows whether Redappa is attending or not.
Oh, Dr. Chandrasekhar, I see Dr. Redappa here.
Chandrasekhar, sir?
Okay.
Hello?
Never mind, I'll keep moving.
Okay.
So I'm going to move to the next thing in the framework, the alternatives. This is the leg of the stool here. So alternatives are about what you can do. And here, from the cool head side, we talk about distinct directions, different enough directions. And the heart side is they should be interesting enough. So one of the things that before I go there, one of the things that politicians do really well is they will say, "Oh, we have to do this," and they will compare it with a nonsense alternative that doing nothing is not an option. Nobody proposed doing nothing as an option, but it's a lazy kind of thing to do, and it makes your alternative look better. And for the rest of us also, we routinely have this attachment to one idea, one alternative that is a pet alternative, and we decide to go forward with that and not really expend the time to find good alternatives. So anybody can pick between good and bad. What makes the quality of the decision go higher is when you have a couple of really good alternatives to pick from. That's what makes it hard. So how do you get enough different ideas? And the other thing mistake people make, it's a bias, is you got one idea, then you tweak it a little bit, and you're anchored to that first idea, and you try to get a slight incremental improvement. And one big thing in the space is, can you really push yourself to think differently, think outside the box, and completely new kind of alternative in the space? That's hard to do, but it's well worth the time to invest in it. So I'm going to talk about one tool, but before I do that, I'm going to give you another poll. Oh, sorry. I made a mistake in that. I don't have a poll for this. This is a chat question. Can you type in the chat, how do you define strategy? What to you is strategy? This is an interaction question, so I have a lot of good materials, but I can only move forward once people interact. Girish, clear plan of action. You got 3 responses, waiting for more. What is strategy? Finding solutions for problem. Planning for better outcomes, planning to get desired results. By the way, you're welcome to type in Kannada as well. I can use translate and read it. What is strategy? Please type in your chat. We only have 4. I know there's so many of you who are active.
Possibilities of extra.
Yeah, please type it in the chat. Let's see. Let's get some more responses in there. All right. Okay, let's see. So I asked this question to students while preparing here, and they had a couple of different answers, and I clubbed them together into buckets. The first bucket, oh, here's another one, optimization of action to achieve goal. Yeah, so they had buckets here. One was a route to a goal, and I think Dr. Vidya is saying planning to get desired results kind of in this bucket. planning for better outcomes, clear plan of action. I think clear plan of action sits more in process, and optimization is what Vijendra said, optimization of action to achieve the goal. Strategies with references to our strengths. That's another way of talking about it. But get predicted outcomes of process and route to goal. Yeah, planning for getting good achievement. So route to goal again, finding solution for problem, again, route to goal. So we've got something in each of these buckets in here in the responses I'm getting. So yeah, these are all good answers. And I would define strategy in decision analysis. We have a very specific definition of strategy, and that is a set of interconnected alternatives. So what do I mean by that? So imagine drawing up the decisions you have. So oftentimes what makes strategy hard is you don't have just one decision, you have multiple decisions to make together. And if you can list the alternatives, mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive alternatives for each of them, each of the decisions, then you can start to connect. Let's say a strategy theme involves alternative one from decision one, the second alternative from decision two, and the first alternative from decision three. A different walk through this table would be alternative three here, one in two, and three in three. And so this is a very different way of thinking about constructing strategies. So I'm going to give you a little example. So I'm going to continue with this placement one, and the question is, what is my strategy for building an AI career? And when I looked at this, I was very, very interested in AI right from the time it got admission at BIT. And so what are the decisions in front of me? So one decision was I had to find the project. And the question is, when should I find the project? In my first year, second year, third year, and final year. And then I had to find a sponsor, somebody who would give me the project. Like, this is a problem I'm interested in. And here the alternatives are: industry can give me the project, research lab can give it to me, I can get it from on campus, professors can give me something, or I can go home and in the break do something there. And then the third knob I could turn was, who is going to work with me on this? Am I going to do it by myself? And should I have a team of 2, 3, or 4? I didn't want to go more than 4. So this is like an example of the knobs I can turn. And now I can start to construct strategies by combining these. So for instance, there's a lazy theme here. The lazy theme is I added one more alternative here called maybe. I maybe get an AI project, I'm not sure. Basically, I'm not going to do anything. It will just come to me if it comes, if it comes. Sponsor, I'll do an industry project. And this is, I think, final year level. And I'll go with a team of 4, and that's it. It'll be what it is. The reactive one is I wait for final year project, and I will go to some research lab, because research labs tend to do more AI work, and I'll go with a team of 4 because that was the norm at the time. 4 people go and do something together. But I could also get an early start, and I could start up in the third year, find a research lab, because AI is hard. It takes a lot of time to even understand. So I knew that I didn't know. So I wanted to give myself more time. And I'd find my team of 4 and go to a research lab. The next strategy is use my breaks wisely. So why wait till third year? What if I started prepping in the second year? Second year, I'll be busy with classwork, maybe on campus if I can find some interesting projects. Just do them myself. And fine breaks is first year, whenever I go home, let me go and do something on home computer and see what happens. So I had a whole list of different strategies. Now there's another one hidden in there, which is, what about these class projects in computer science in third year? Why, people usually just do it from what is assigned, but we don't have to. We can go to the industry and get a project. And, I'm not stuck to a team of 4, maybe 2, 3, or 4 people, I don't know. But let's try and do something in AI in the industry. And basically, and I'm now listing all the strategies and the combinations of them. And you can see by just doing this process, right, that I have a lot of choices. And in fact, I could do the early start class projects, use my breaks and find breaks in the first year. And they, or these four, they operate on different time scales. And that's a very interesting thing. Like, it's not either or. So when I laid this out this way, it's like, oh, this is pretty interesting. So um, some of this is retrospective. I didn't have this whole strategy table at that time, but I had components of this in my mind. So I did take breaks in my first year and do at-home projects, helping my seniors out. So I remember there was a senior who was doing a project in Michael Bosch, and no, actually, he was doing it in the Indian Statistical Institute. And that's the first time I got into probability because they were doing something very interesting. This was mechanical engineering. The mech department is very, very innovative at BIT, and these students had figured out. They read some article in the newspaper that a blind mechanic was listening to the sound of an IC engine on a motorcycle and could tell you what the defect was. So these students were taking these sound samples from the various garages, and they had found a way to label them from expert opinion that this sound profile belongs to this problem. Now, this was 1995. So this was a classic machine learning problem, except we didn't call it machine learning. And they had all the data analyzed, but what they didn't have was software. And then because I enjoyed programming, so they asked for my help. So I went home and I made them a little inference package where you feed it an unknown sample. It'll tell you the probability of the sample coming from a particular IC engine defect type. So this was a very good thing, like a very intentional thing. Then I used the breaks in my second year intern with a company called Pentafor Software, and did something there with drunken random walks. And then in class projects, I partnered with two of my classmates and went off to Hindustan Limited, where they would, I mean, like we were looking for problems to solve. And so there it turns out the air traffic controller had this big problem of how to schedule the flights. And it's a very big operations research activity where they have only so many parking spots. And this was before Bangalore airport became so big. This is the older airport. And so how do they give the schedule so that you don't get a parking problem? And that's, again, an optimization problem, which we ended up cracking for them. They used it to make their schedule for that year for Bangalore airport. And then the early start, Sojan is on the call. Sojan, me, and two other classmates, we formed a team in the third year, and we went and worked with the Center for AI and Robotics. And we told them, look, we want to get into AI, computer vision, but it's hard work. We've never done this before, so we're coming early. We want 2 years. And so I think we worked for pretty much 2 years there. And that was our final year project. So this is a sort of a story of, if we are really intentional, a lot can be achieved. And so being able to lay out these things, like we were very intentional about who our sponsor would be, who our team would be, and when should we start. These were all knobs that we could control at some level. Sojan, I'm going to invite you again, put you on the spot. Do you want to add any color to this, since you were with me in that early start strategy?
Maybe question to you, Somik. Did you really use a framework, or I mean, this is something you learned later on?
Well, so these three knobs were very much in my mind. I didn't lay it out as a table, but the idea that it has to be AI was not reactive. It was a very intentional choice. The idea that it has to be Care Center for AI and Robotics was a choice. And the idea that I would work with you and two of our other friends was a choice. I was very clear about it from the beginning.
So the framework part is something you picked up and you understood what you did looking back.
Right. The framework helps me explain it. And proactively, like if I were to face this again, the framework would make it easier to lay it out and to communicate with everybody.
Yeah.
And for other decisions, I found the framework helps me generate more alternatives, more strategies. Because you literally try a different combination, a new strategy will pop out. And that's why this framework, I find it invaluable. I use it all the time for product management. When we are coming into a new area where I'm not pretty clear about the alternatives, I'll sit with the product manager and lay out what's in that person's mind. So they have a lot of intuition. The people who've been thinking
Ale?
deeply about it.
ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಯಾರೋ ಕೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ
But they have they have the intuition. But once it's laid out, then other people can help them say, "Hey, what about this combination? What about that combination?" And that becomes very powerful because that now allows them to see alternatives that they had not thought about before. So, any follow on? No. Other people. Srinivas, do you want to say something? Other people, this is, do you think this tool can be useful to you? Laying out what are your decisions and connecting it and finding strategies. Yeah.
Maybe one view, Samik, this is a very intentional strategy, and not everyone has this kind of mindset and clarity. So for example, me, right? So my strategy was finding someone who had the clarity, who can take things forward. Right? So that is also a strategy because people are different, and you have to know what your strengths are.
So that's a really good point, Sojan. Let me honor that sentiment and say, there's the monastic view of decision making, which is every outcome is the right outcome, then there's no decision to be made, right? Then DA is not the best thing to use. But if you believe you want to influence your outcomes in some way, then this is the best way to think about it. That's all I want to say, right? And there have been times in your life when I'm sure you've had to make very big decisions or important and meaningful decisions. And at that point, you would have to think. Now, it has also happened in my life where good things have come without my asking. Like, so actually, to your point, to support your point, right? So you see all this intentional, this guy's all about AI, right? That's what you're taking away from this. But then what happened was I got, in the previous decision hierarchy, I interviewed with this um, AI company, the computer vision company, and got in, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing computer vision in Japan. And just 1 month before joining, the, the founder of the company calls me and says, Somik, there's a change of plans. Okay, what is the change? Oh, we have decided to put you in a different company. I'm like, really? What? So, okay, as long as it's doing some artificial intelligence, like computer vision. Oh, no, 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 it has nothing to do with AI or computer vision. I'm like, really? What is it about? It's about collaboration technology. I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about this. Okay. Okay, as long as it has something to do with C++, I was really good at C++. Oh, no, no, nothing to do with C++. It's this new language coming up called Java. Okay, I don't know Java. I don't know this collaboration area. Are you sure I'll be able to add value? And the CTO said, oh, yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to learn. And that's it. And to Sojan's point, it happened, right? It was, my intention was going in a different direction. But then I thought, okay, what's my reason for going to Japan? My main reason for going to Japan was to learn martial arts, which I didn't tell my parents. And so I thought this would be a cool experience. Why not? I'll be open to it. And I did it. And it was a fantastic experience, just fantastic. So actually, in support of Sojan's point, this planning is great because I had really good options and so on. And I wouldn't have gotten this other option if I hadn't tried to get into AI. But it just so happens that life took me in a different direction and I had a very different trajectory after that. Sojan, any reaction to that?
No reaction, just smiling.
Adding to Sojan. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Adding to Sojan's comment, actually what he was mentioning is he doesn't have a strategy. That is also one strategy, right? not having a strategy is also a strategy. So what I feel is, it doesn't have a goal. It is open for all the goals. So most of the time the decision is a reactive one. That is, you are prepared for that in a broader way, and some opportunity comes, so you will react to it as the opportunity seeks the reaction. So can we call that as a strategy? I doubt.
So the very fact that it's reactive means it's not a strategy, unless you've thought about it and said, maybe a good way of putting it is, life is too complicated for me. I don't have the bandwidth to go chase things. If it comes, it comes. Okay, if you're doing it with your eyes open, that's fine. But I have found in general that people who get the most satisfaction from their work think about what they want, and they think about how they're going to get it. And if they don't, then your boat will be tossed by the winds in directions that you will not like very much. Now, I like the outcomes I got because I had a broader goal to learn and see different cultures and meet different people. So that was all feeding in. It wasn't just AI, right? So and I was open to it, and I kept learning new things, and my career went in a very different manner. So a wrong way to use this tool is to make it to become a rigid person. But that's not the point here. The point is that when you lay out your choices and you can find your pathway through it, then you at least have a starting point. You're not just waiting for someone to come and bail you out. That's not the, you could do that, but you better be prepared to accept whatever comes your way, and and don't complain if you don't like what comes your way. So you have to distinguish between a good outcome and a good decision. So I'm going back to that foundation again. You may get a really good outcome by not doing any work, but that's what it is. It's just a good outcome with maybe a bad decision. That's for you to tell. Nobody else can judge, right? And by the way, Sojan's being very humble here. He made a very intentional decision to trust me because he saw how I was thinking about things, and he knew that he could focus. And the reason I wanted him on my team is because he was a deep research expert even 20 years back. I knew that if I had him on my team, our team would be tremendously valuable. So I pursued him. My strategy was Sojan has to be on my team. That was it. And then the two other people also were two other ladies who were on the team. They were extremely great researchers. So that's the reason I wanted them. And that was very intentional. They agreed to my strategy. So they were not, it's not that they were being reactive. I had to convince them, like, why is this the case? They understood the logic, and then they were like, yeah, this would be pretty cool if we could get through. And so together we then made the pitch. And Center for AI and Robotics at that time was a very exclusive institution where people from IIT alone would be taken. They never heard of BIT. And so we had to fight really hard to get in. And that too, they would accept one person. But we pitched as it's a team of four. You have to take all four of us or nobody. And that was a very intentional strategy. And Sojan, you remember that?
Yeah, definitely.
You remember that, right? These are not reactive at all. This is like very early on, we realized we'll be more successful as a team than as one person. These were choices. And Sojan was a part of it. So there was a lot to it. Like, we enjoyed that. We have fond memories of that. But this was very intentional. Yeah, I like that.
Only I was commenting on Sojan's comment, not on personal abilities of Sojan.
No. I understand what you're commenting, but I'm saying that there's more to the story than what he shared. There was a strong strategic understanding from his point.
Yeah.
What were we trying to
I
do?
can understand. I can make out. I can make out.
Yeah.
You are all very matured then.
Yeah. So Satya, I agree. No strategy may set into lazy category. Could very well be. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next item in the framework, information. And here, this is about credible sources of information. Where are you getting it from? Are they trustworthy? Are they reliable? And then compelling forecast is about, is it relevant to your decision? Is it material? Will your decision change? And one of the interesting examples comes from medicine, that if you have ever gone to a doctor for a test Sometimes doctors will give you very painful tests. So I have this one story where a doctor has asked the professor, hey, let's do a stool test, and very uncomfortable, very painful. And the professor does it, and then the doctor says, interesting. I said, what do you mean interesting? So what will you change in your therapy? Oh, nothing. I was just curious. And the professor was like, wait a second. Just because you are curious about science, you made me go through all this trouble. So one of the fundamental questions we ask is, what decision will change because of this information? And that is called the materiality test. If nothing will change, that test has no value of information. So this is a very, very important concept. So is it compelling? If you see this information, will it change your mind? So that's another piece on it. So if I were to ask you, if you see this table in front of you, I'm showing you some data, reading ability and shoe size. What can you infer? What would you say? So type in the chat. This is a quick exercise. Please type in the chat. Anybody can see a pattern here. Any pattern here? Who's going to jump in? Maybe somebody can jump in and speak. No, the information Girish is credible. Okay, I've actually found, let's say, the reading ability scores
Hello.
and the shoe
Hello.
size. Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead, Vijendra.
Reading ability increases with the shoe size.
Very good. So you're seeing that pattern here, right? So if you have a bigger shoe, then you read better. So now decision analysis has a very, very interesting move to offer, and we call it the relevance diagram. And the relevance diagram is a way to talk about what you know. So here I have one bubble which says shoe size in an oval, and I have another distinction called reading ability. And this arrow says shoe size may be relevant to reading ability. And the maybe is very important, the language, the way we frame it. Arrows can never claim relevance, they can only claim the possibility of relevance. And so this used to be called an influence diagram, but we changed the name. We don't like the word influence because influence implies causality, and you have to be very, very careful about causal thoughts. So decision analysis gives you a power move, and the power move is whenever you see two things having some apparent relevance, always ask yourself the question, fact to the expert, choose size and irrelevant. And in the relevance diagram, if there is no arrow, that is a strong claim. It means there is no relevance. You can only claim irrelevance. You cannot claim relevance. You can only say maybe relevant. And here saying shoe size is totally irrelevant to reading ability. So I'm going to ask everybody here, can anybody come up with the X factor which will make these two irrelevant? What is the X factor? You type in the chat. If you knew X, knowing shoe size will tell you nothing about reading ability. Sorry, Dr. Vidya, go ahead. What are you saying? Dr. Vidya, go ahead. What is your guess?
X is age.
Yes, age, indeed. Very good guess. So given age, people are going to get bigger shoes as they get older, and their reading ability will improve. And so what this is showing us is oftentimes in medicine, medicine is a very big offender of this mistake. They will look at data and they will quickly conclude, oh, there's a correlation, then they'll publish it. And then the media, which doesn't know any better, they will amplify it. And then these researchers will get called into media interviews. Oh, this is highly correlated. Well, the big question they haven't asked is, what is not in my data that explains my data? That is a very, very important question that decision analysis gives us. formally and asks you to think about. So I'll give you one example. I was in Bangalore on one of my trips a couple years back, and I saw this note, this research study published. It happened in the West, and it was picked up in the Indian newspapers that um, e- eating yogurt, curd, is good for preventing diabetes. Now, this is very strange because my wife is an Ayurvedic doctor, and I asked her, and in Ayurveda, apparently, it says that if you want to avoid diabetes, you should avoid yogurt. It's like, this is totally in contradiction. How could this be? So then I looked at the study. So they had, like shoe size, they had consuming yogurt, and they had diabetes. And and so, can anybody think of the X factor? Like, what is the X factor that makes yogurt and diabetes irrelevant to each other? Can anyone think of it?
Right?
Curd rice? No, good try. But did you say curd rice?
Maybe
No,
curd is had with something else, which is the X factor.
no. Think of it. Let me give you a hint. Think of it as who are the people who are likely to have curd or yogurt in the West? What kind of people will go and seek out yogurt? Yeah, but this was a study in the West, not in India. So how is yogurt marketed in the West?
Okay. So that rules out curd rice, but normally the curds are sweetened with fruits and stuff in abroad.
Right, but keep going in that line of thinking. So how is it marketed to you?
Healthy?
Healthy, exactly. It is healthy. If you want to be healthy, you should take curd. Now, the people who want to be healthy are those who are seeking out yogurt, but these are also the same people who have a good lifestyle and they're doing regular exercise, taking care of their sleep. So they're less likely to have diabetes. But what we are seeing in the data is just, oh, they're taking yogurt and oh, they don't have diabetes. But we have not controlled for people with healthy habits. And this is a very big mistake. So then I reached out to there's a reputed university which did it in their health policy department. And I knew the assistant professor was a contemporary of mine. And I told him, hey, what is this? And he agreed. He said, hey, yeah, this is a mistake in the study. They should have controlled. They did not control. But it was his boss who did it, the head of the department. And he's like, okay, I'm not going to fight with the boss. But meanwhile, all over India, people are like, oh, you have to have yogurt so it'll prevent diabetes. Oh my God. This is the kind of nonsense that happens in medicine all the time. Okay, so the bottom line is vaccinate yourself against any causal claims. If somebody tells you A is causing B, you must be skeptical, always. So here's another one. This is actually from WebMD. So when I give you the slides, you can read it. But basically, vitamin D deficiency linked to severe COVID. Okay, I won't do a breakout room, but I'll just ask you here. What is the X factor that will make vitamin D deficiency irrelevant to severe COVID? What can you think of? A hint.
Working in closed
Working in?
environments,
Exactly. So,
environment.
right. If you're indoor all the time, then you are going to get vitamin D deficiency. But if you are indoor all the time, what does that also mean about your health? And who are the people who are likely to be outdoors as a matter of habit, right? These are also the people who tend to have a healthy lifestyle. Remember, these are all Western studies. So it's not, we're not talking about people who have to work in the hot sun all the time. These are people who are like, okay, they're outside, they have a healthy routine while they are going for hikes. They don't have vitamin D deficiency. And these are, if you are healthy, if you are eating well, sleeping well, taking care of yourself, you are much less likely to get severe COVID. That is all very well established. And so if you haven't controlled for health, suddenly vitamin D seems like, oh, it can cause lower the chance of severe COVID. No, it could very well be, it has nothing to do with it. But here we are, and a lot of people have made money with vitamin D capsules. So this is the kind of problem, like, where is publicizing this? You see? So this is a huge problem in India. This happens all the time. You open up a newspaper, you will see there's always a nutritionist section. The nutritionist section is the biggest offender of this. First you see, oh, eggs are bad for you. Nowadays it is good for you. Nowadays salt is bad for you. This is all coming from this causal mistakes. So they're missing out on context. So any comments on that before I move on? Are my comments making sense? You see, I'm using very, very precise language. We don't use the word influence because influence means there's some causal link. I'm using the word relevance, that knowing something may tell you something about the other distinction. So that language is very carefully chosen because it prevents verbal delusion. That's a very, very important thing. I want to take one comment and then move on. Who wants to speak? Sojan, does this make sense?
Yeah. Correlation is not causation.
Yeah, exactly. Correlation is not causation. The funny thing is the people who do these research, they know this, they will say it, but they will still do media interviews and say, oh, this result is so important. I'm like, wait a second. The public doesn't have that distinction, and you are saying it is very important, and you have not talked about the X factors. You have no idea what the X factors are, and you're spreading misinformation. This happens all the time. Just open your newspaper, you will see it. Okay. So I can go. This itself is a breakout workshop. So let me keep going. So one of the things we use quite a lot in product management in decision analysis is I call this funnel mapping. So when you're launching a new product, I want to understand the economics of the product. So this is actually a giant relevance diagram, which has a very particular characteristic where all these ovals, these thin ovals are irrelevant to each other, meaning they're framed as independent. Like knowing one doesn't tell you much about the other, but it flows through that total addressable market of whatever your product is and how much market penetration will you have in this market. And given that you've penetrated the market, what is your share going to be? It's about competition. And you can keep going until you get to the bottom line. How much would you make? This is before you launch a product. And this is a very important conversation that we have and deal with uncertainty there. So then let me just do a quick recap from yesterday. Where does probability come from? I asked you these questions, and I won't go through this again, but we ended up doing the hypothetical coin toss, and we asked Sojan his probability of heads, and he said 50%, and Prabha Madam said 50, and we showed the result to Sojan, and then heads, if it lands heads, he would say 100%, or he would say 0 if it's tails, and Prabha would say it's 50%. So two people having two different probabilities. And so we talked yesterday about my probability. This is the notation we use: curly brace event given the pipe symbol and ampersand. Now this ampersand is a very interesting thing. I would often wonder why we are even saying it, because is it even necessary if everywhere we have to keep saying ampersand? Isn't it understood? And later on, it took me some years to understand that it's not, if you don't use it, you can start to think that your information is the be all end all. It's the best information you could have, and you don't need to work any harder. The ampersand makes you humble. It tells you that no, given what you know right now, this is your probability. And if your state of information changes, your probability will change. So, so making the habit of writing this, it forces us, the probability analysts, to remain humble, and to recognize that there's more to be learned. So event given ampersand, and we talked about the clairvoyant, can't tell you if a model is right, can only tell you yes or no, something happened, facts about the future. So I want to talk about another concept here. Who needs uncertainty when you have data? So I know there might be people here in the audience who are doing AI ML work as well. And AI ML is in the context of big data. You have so much data. Why do you need uncertainty? So I want to introduce you to the statistical turkey. And this is an excerpt from a book called The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And he has in it a wonderful example of a statistical turkey. This is a turkey which has studied statistics. And so it calculates its probability just from data, and the probability of its next meal is the number of days it has been fed divided by the number of days fed plus 1. And so after 1,000 days of getting its meal, its probability of getting the next meal is 99.99%. Okay, that's how the equation works out. The only problem is the 1,001st day is Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is an American holiday where the turkey is slaughtered and then cooked and eaten. And so just before the turkey is going to be slaughtered, it has the highest probability that you'll get the next meal. And that is why if you think of probability as just data, you'll make very, very major mistakes in thinking. And that probability is different data. Let me pause here. I want to get reactions on this example. Who wants to speak? Please unmute. Rupa, madam, any comments on this? Yeah, go ahead.
So
Yes,
probably
Vijay.
depends on the size of the data.
No, I'm saying the opposite. Here, the size of the data is massive. It's so massive that the turkey, right before it's getting slaughtered, it's like, oh, 99.9% chance I will get the next meal. It's completely wrong. It's missing human context, right? And you will always miss context. Anywhere you go, you can never have perfect information about anything. So probability is a construct that allows you to recognize that you can't know everything. And so you must be uncertain. That's why, I said we should outlaw 100% on anything. But I'm saying that even 99.99% is too extreme. The turkey, if the turkey had studied probability theory, it might have, I don't know, I don't see too many turkeys around me crossing the 1,000-day mark. Maybe it's 70%. Who knows what's going to happen? If it's just about data, you don't need probability because you just have data. But even if you have lots of data, you can make fundamental mistakes. I'll give you another example. So if you are a banker, right, and somebody tells you, oh, in Belandur, well, of course, Belandur is now waterlogged. Let me pick another area. Let's say Hosur. We have just discovered that the water table in Hosur is going down. Now, what will happen? That means that you build new property there. That property will have no access to water and it will be worthless. Nobody will want to buy homes there. So now the builders and all the people who are applying for home loans in Hosur, I should immediately start rejecting it. Otherwise, our bank will be in the red. And now if you say, no, it doesn't show in the data, AI system, you'll make a very big mistake with AI systems because there'll be a big time lag to take this macroeconomic knowledge and put it into the data. By the time you start seeing it, you would have lost a lot of money. So any smart banker will immediately say, stop loans immediately. And that's the same mistake. Like, if you don't stop it, you'll be like the statistical turkey, right? You see that? Vijendra, do you understand that example?
Yeah. So what I mean to say is, given the context here, the other parameters or variables involved with the computation of probability may increase the validity of the large data.
Yeah. I'm not denying the usefulness of large data. There is no question about it. But I'm saying that solely being limited to data is a problem.
Along with the variabilities, variables associated with the computer probabilities. Like here, the Thanksgiving Day. This problem, here in this problem,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving Day is one of the variable, probably, which should be included in the model to compute the probability.
Yeah.
No, but the problem is Turkey only relied on past data for how many times it was being fed, and you can never make complete models about everything. So the bigger point is probability allows you, like if you're making decisions under uncertainty, and if you're talking about probability, this allows you to mathematically change system decisions based on things that are not in the data and will not be in the data. It cannot be in the data. Okay. Like for instance, if I'm launching a new product, no data exists for whether this product will be successful because I haven't launched it. I haven't even built it. And yet when I'm funding it, my decisions are based on the uncertainty of whether this product will succeed or not. So probability is a way of talking about that uncertainty, navigating that uncertainty, and having intelligent conversations about it. And that doesn't mean anything goes. It means that I can at least ask, why is your probability high? Why is it low? So I can learn. So that's where it is useful. And also, like when you now, as we are in large systems, if the systems don't allow for human intervention, they're very dangerous. And how do you do human intervention currently? Because most systems are not probability driven, you have to just turn the whole system off because of macroeconomic events. So, for instance, there was a forest fire near where I live, and the air quality deteriorated suddenly overnight. And everybody's rushing to buy N95 masks. This is before COVID. Now masks are not a problem anymore, but there weren't enough masks, and so if you got the news of a forest fire and if you're a big giant like Walmart or say Reliance, then your artificial intelligence algorithms will not pick up that there will be huge demand of masks until it's too late. So if your system is probabilistic, then you can say, hey, the probability of this inventory being needed is very high. So I can manually shoot that up and the whole system will adjust. But right now, because systems are not built that way, what will happen is people will have to just override the entire system and then manually supply. That's very expensive. And that's one of the things I feel that systems will evolve and should evolve to allow for human judgment to combine with machine judgment. And probability is what allows you to make that happen. Yeah.
Quick question.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
remember, maybe the maybe 90s, maybe 2000s, this idea of fuzzy logic was very popular. It went away suddenly, but I mean, it's pretty much the same thing, isn't it? Probability based, this fuzzy logic.
Actually, fuzzy, it's kind of interesting you bring up fuzzy logic. It was created by this guy named Lofty Zadeh. And the thing about fuzzy logic is they had this thing of fuzzy sets. He was trying to get into decision making, but he didn't have any explicit concept of uncertainty. And that is why it just faded away. Like it's not like anything that we see in machine learning. It's it took that huge leap because of probability. Fuzzy logic did not, like, it was used in washing machines. They called it fuzzy sets, but it wasn't quite understandable as to how this thing works and how is it following certain principles of logic. Whereas probability theory, anything that's based on, and decision theory by extension, is based on a continuous lineage of 200 years of theory development. So we can tell you exactly why we're doing this, and it's traceable all the way through. So this is quite different from fuzzy logic. That would be my conclusion. The fuzzy logic cannot talk about, hey, uncertainty. What will happen is the probability changes. But there's no probability in fuzzy logic. Then how do you make decisions if you have no concept of uncertainty? Right? Then there's a concept of preferences, which we're going to talk about next. So there's all these pieces of a decision, and if you don't have any of these pieces, these are like the minimum set to talk about good decision making. If anybody selling your theory for decision making, you'd have to ask them, well, how are you going to handle uncertainty? How are you going to handle values? How will you handle alternatives? And if you can't, then there's a big problem there. So, yep, I think I talked about compelling information like the water table in Hosur going down. Let me go down to values. Now, values is in by far the thing that allows you to make the choice. If you cannot tell who you are or who you want to be, you can't make trade-off decisions. So actually, before I talk about this, let me share. Alice in Wonderland is a wonderful English story that many people have read, and Alice is by Lewis Carroll. And Alice is walking through the woods, and there's a Cheshire cat. This cat is a funny cat and can talk. And there's a fork in the road, and Alice is asking the cat, which path should I take? And the cat says, well, it depends on where you want to go. And so Alice says, well, it doesn't really matter. And the cat says, well, which path you take? And Alice says, as long as I get somewhere. And the cat says, oh, you're sure to get somewhere if you just keep walking. So it's a very profound conversation about values and preferences. And so if you don't know who you want to be or where you want to go, no one can help you with decision making. And so I have a resource here. I have a little nonprofit guidebook, sort of a playbook called The Business of Impact Measurement, which talks about how we understand impact in the nonprofit sector. And the bottom line of this is the purpose of any decision analysis is to take complexity off the table so you can focus on who you want to be. So it's not about optimization will decide which decision you make. It is that the optimization algorithms, if it's a good job that we've done, then it connects the humans to their gut and you know this is the right decision to make. Because you lose that connection when you are facing a very complex situation. So decision analysis looks at it in two dimensions. The clear head is, can you tell what the trade-offs are clearly and make those trade-offs? And the noble purpose is, who do you want to be as a person in this through this decision? And how are these trade-offs, how are these preferences aligned to who you want to be? That's a foundational question in any decision analysis. So I'll give you an example. I was consulting when I was in this company called SmartOrg with a plastic packaging company called Sholi, and I found that they got stuck. In our strategy workshops, they couldn't imagine their future. And my research was on values. This was my PhD dissertation. And so I went to my boss and said, hey, these guys are stuck not because of strategy. I think they need to get clear on who they want to be. And so my boss told me, go talk to the president of the company. So I did. And he said, oh, you're talking about values. You mean like integrity? And my response was, integrity is very important. And they had posters with integrity on it. I was like, that's not what I'm talking about. When I say values, I mean what is important to you in the work that you're doing. And I couldn't quite explain it at that time. Then we did another workshop, we were totally stuck. And that's when the question was asked. My boss asked the question, hey, what's going on here? And then one of the middle managers said, I drive a Prius, which is a hybrid vehicle, because I care about the environment. I stitch my own bags and take it to the grocery store because I want to reduce plastic. And here I'm in a company that makes plastic. I basically want to feel proud coming to work. I want to make a difference to the planet. And suddenly, and she's saying all this, like, I feel ashamed of sometimes, making more plastic. And this is the plastic packaging company. There was pin drop silence, and the president of the company said, me too. And then I had my opportunity, and then I ran a values exercise. And I asked them, what makes you proud coming to work? What are the things that you're really proud of having achieved? And I'm listening not for the first thing that comes out of your mouth, but I'm listening for those feelings, those vibrations of emotion that I can feel it is really meaningful to you. And I had people interview each other to listen for that vibration. And they came up with 4 things that were very profound. One was their packaging made food safe for consumption. Second is it kept food natural because they had invented aseptic packaging. You didn't need to add preservatives into the food. And they felt natural was just something that everybody deserved to have. The third was economic. Because you can protect food so well, you can transport it over long distances and people can afford things that they could not otherwise afford. So it made things democratized. It was economic. And the fourth is sustainable. Because you can protect food so well, you don't need to grow as much. The burden on the planet is lower. And so, fourth values, which had nothing to do with making money, and the packaging is what made it possible. And this overnight changed the culture of the company. And so, I have a longer video on that story, and you can watch it here when you get the deck. So, what happened was because they got clear on who they wanted to be, when they were thinking just about money, that hey, we are $500 million company, we want to become $1 billion company. No good ideas were coming, nothing. And when they switched to how do we make the planet safer, more natural, more economic, more sustainable through our packaging, lots of great ideas were coming. And then we would do a decision analysis and understand which ones had the biggest economic lift, because they're already a values match. So everything matched their values. Now it's a question of where do you want to get the biggest bang for the buck. So the money matters so you can deliver on your values. And the idea, the bottom line here is the clarity on who you want to be is always upstream. It precedes strategy. Okay. So let me pause here and get reactions. So can you hear me? I just changed my headset.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any reactions to this story on values? So you can see that we're not sacrificing the head. The heart is about noble purpose, that we are serving the planet with these values. The head is you got to do it sensibly and pick the biggest opportunities. You got to make money. Disney said, I don't make movies to make money, I make money to make movies. And the order is so important, because if you don't make money, you cannot do anything. But you're not making money just for the sake of making money. You're doing it in service of your values. This is foundational for every single decision analysis and for every optimization problem. If you cannot answer who you want to be, you cannot optimize, because suppose I say I'm optimizing revenues. The next question is why? I can't answer. Why not profit? I have to be able to answer, well, this is who we want to be in the market, and that is why this is the case. So the who, know yourself is the foundation on which you have to make decisions. Any comments? Dr. Rajamani, Sojan, Vijendra. Reactions? You can also type in the chat. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, sir. Sorry, someone said hello and go ahead. Okay, Sojan, I'm putting you on the spot. Reactions? Oh, Sojan, you're muted. Sorry. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
I agree with you. People, I think, repeating it, so asking those questions and think what you really want. Maybe a page from my life. Right? So last year I really asked myself this question and decided I don't want to work where I'm working anymore because I didn't have a good reason. I didn't have a good answer. get something else to do.
So, Sojan, can you give more context? Like, where were you? What was the career you were in, and what did you end up changing?
I was working in a company for 12, 13 years, in the industry for 13 years, and asked myself, is that, am I doing what I really want to do? And like you said, this research, learning something new, doing something new. I felt that that was no longer the case. Of course, money was good, and security was good, but that is not really what it's not really for. I was looking for something else. Something different.
And what are you doing right now? So you left a lucrative
What am I doing
career.
right now is research.
Yeah.
And in my so it's research. It's learning something new, building something new, trying to change the status quo, and I'm also doing some sailing.
So I have a little more context. So Sojan he's in the electronics industry. He is building a new research framework with a language called Rust, and he's building a new foundation for the industry. And it's just very bold move. Like if you would look at it, why not just keep growing through the ranks and just doing what he's doing? And no, he reflected on his values, and he's out to change the industry. It's a very big risk. It may or may not work out. Outcome will be what it is, but this is the right decision for him. It's a good decision for him because it's connected to who he wants to be. It's a great example. Okay. So how did values play out in our case studies? So, if you look at it, I think I already mentioned briefly that I had clear trade-offs on which companies to sit for and which not to. And the noble purpose for me was I wanted to change the way we talked about AI, and I wanted to play a role in that movement. And so this is all about who I wanted to be. The strategy table, it's like it wasn't enough. Like I saw BIT as a great opportunity. Like I did not want to waste my 4 years here. I wanted to use the full opportunity, the full support of every faculty member and do research. And I pretty much did that. Like it was very intentional. So the values were pretty much there, and the frame and the alternatives piece are deeply connected to that. I want to point that out. I'm going to the next element of decision quality, which is integration. And here, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. This is actually where the whole mathematical logic of decision analysis sits. And there is a particular framework called the 5 rules of actional thought. And it goes like this, that you have the problem. You have to accept these rules if you want to use the mathematics of decision analysis. And the first is the probability rule, which says that if you are uncertain, you agree to place a probability as a complete expression of your uncertainty. And that will be a number between 0 and 100%. If you agree with that, then the order rule says that if you like chocolate ice cream over vanilla ice cream, and if you like mango over chocolate, then you will prefer mango over vanilla as well. Like you have these orders of things that you care about, and more broadly, you prefer more money to less. If you don't talk to me, I could get a lot of money out of you. So isn't that common sense, more or less? The equivalence rule says that if you have a deal, an uncertain deal, you will be willing to talk about that equivalence, like that uncertain deal is equivalent to a certain amount. So for instance, if you have a 50-50 shot of heads versus tails, and if you get heads, you get $100. So 50-50 shot of $100 versus nothing. If you get heads, you get 100. If you get tails, you get nothing. Then the equivalence would be, if I were a risk neutral person, I would say that's worth $50 to me. That's not the expected value. The economists call this expected value. That's the wrong term because you cannot expect $50. You can only expect 100 or nothing. So we call it the certain equivalent. It comes from the equivalence rule that if you gave me $50 for certain, I would be indifferent between having $50 or having this uncertain deal of 100 versus nothing 50-50. The substitution rule says wherever I see this uncertain deal, like 50-50 short of 100 versus nothing, I'm willing to substitute that with $50. And the choice rule says when I've done all of this stuff, I will always, and I have two alternatives and I've analyzed it this way, I will always pick the one that gives me a higher chance of my preferred outcome. So if you do all of these 5 things, if you accept them, the whole of decision analysis just follows. And so I'm leaving behind a wonderful book by my teacher, Ron Howard, and his student, Ali Abbas, called Foundations of Decision Analysis. I would recommend every college library have this book. There's a nice international edition. We should have lots of copies of this book. I also recommend Dr. Steve and elements of the files of rational thought. There's also another book, a free PDF version of an older decision analysis book. I'll add that into the deck as well. I'm just remembering it now. So let me go to the next one quick case study. Hiring for decision intelligence roles. I'm in the market right now. I just closed my hiring season in the US, and this is something I had to deal with. So I'll give you a quick example of how integration comes in. So integration, it's not just about logic, it's about a marrying of logic and narrative. So insightful reasoning in integration is about, do I have the right logic? So hiring for decision intelligence, which is a field I'm creating with decision analysis on top of AI, I'm part of this movement. A lot of people are in this movement where we are finding it important to create a decision analysis layer on top of AI. And here, the challenge I face is that candidates, when they come for interviewing, they don't know much about decision intelligence and they tend to oversell themselves in order to impress the interviewer. And it backfires because those conversations don't go very well. Then usually the way people do interviews is they'll give you puzzles, and sometimes I'll call it city puzzles. They're not a good indicator of the actual work that people are going to do. So why use them? Then the third problem is decision intelligence roles require an ability to intuitively understand probability. How do I assess that? That's a really big question. And the fourth is it's hard to identify aptitude in these areas which require a lot of deep context. You need to have understood the process of decision analysis in order to do well in these interviews. And many times people are coming from fields where they have some overlap, but they don't quite know this. And then there are actual case studies that people will give, but they take up too much time for the candidate. So I have all these real challenges that I have to deal with, and I've identified these are problems. And so my decision analysis thinking is, well, I'm going to do interviews in a very different way. So what am I going to do? I'm going to give candidates articles to read with enough time. And these are technical articles, and I'll actually share some articles at the end of my deck. And these articles should be representative of the work that we are going to do in our team. And then when they come for the interview, they've read it for a week, they've prepared. Now I want a dialogue, a mature dialogue, and I'm testing for understanding, depth, curiosity, and receptivity. And finally, I'm going to encourage that they appreciate the daily work we're going to do. So once I've given them the article, I tell them, this is what I do every day. There's no need to impress me. Do you really want to do this? Because you might hate it. And people get the opportunity to reflect and say, is this for me? Is this not for me? So now that's the logic part of it. Oops. Oh. Yeah, and then the narrative, inspiring narrative is, why am I doing this? If I have to explain it very simply, up and down to my management, it's like, I want to move away from performative interviewing, which is devoid of work context. And I want to move toward grown-up conversations steeped in the work context, because only then can I have a proper, a high-quality decision where the candidate knows what they're getting into to the best of their ability, and I know that they are interested in this, and that increases my odds of success for them. So this is a very different way of thinking about it. So that's my narrative, and the previous one was the logic piece. This is an example. Okay. Any questions from this? By performative interviewing, I don't like interviews where people have to do a song and dance and entertain the interviewer. That's not no fun. No, it's no fun for the interviewer, and it doesn't help the interviewee. No fun for the interviewee, and doesn't help the interviewer either. Instead, if people can relax, be themselves, and really talk about what they know really well, those are the good interviews. Any thoughts? Sojan, you've been in the industry. I'm sure you've done interviewing and been interviewed. Any comments on this? And others can also type in the chat.
I think it's always challenging to get that realistic situation, the context, and we all tend to take shortcuts. At least that's from my experience, because of the volumes. There's always a pressure for hiring a lot of people, and invariably, people invent some shortcuts, which really don't test the candidates the way they should be tested. So your point is really valid. I mean, if you can come up with a way to put the candidates in a realistic situation, you will get a better hiring, I would say.
Yeah.
Can I put some points here?
Yes, please, sir.
Actually, I had this question of looking into the candidate whether he knows my subject well or my type of work requirement well. I found it is very difficult. Okay, then what I started doing was I will raise some queries, ask them to before the interview itself, so that they can prepare the queries and come back and present the queries and the answers.
Yeah.
So we will be knowing whether that person is capable of queries. If he has copied from an answer from somewhere, no problem. But at least he has understood those queries and answers also is understood. I found that gave me a lot of ideas whether the candidate is good for me or not. Otherwise, just asking from my experience, from my knowledge, his questions, and he doesn't know anything. This kind of thing was not working for me. And looking at his qualification, his ranking also was not helping me. Okay, so what I did was, I created queries for my type of work requirement, and I used to send them. And sometimes I ask them to write then put some sites or like that. I tried to go for me to select situation was not there in that university. Okay, and choice was very little. Among the available little choice, I have to make the decision. It was very difficult. I tried to do this, and sometimes it was helpful to me. Thank you. Because instead of creating a general, queries for everybody, same query, same answer, it will not work. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Thank you. Very good comments from both Sojan and Dr. Rajamani. Appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to the last element of the framework, commitment to action. And there are two pieces here. Do you have actionable plans? That's the head speaking. And is the intention aligned for the community that's going to execute on the decision? Because oftentimes the intention is the biggest problem. So I'm going to give a little tool here that I found very helpful. It comes from Speech Act theory, and it's also captured in the book Ethics for the Real World from a professor Ron Howard and one of his former students, Dr. Clint Corver. And it's about high quality commitments. And the idea is that a commitment has two parts to it, a promise and a request and a promise. So a high quality request is one which is made with a space for a decline. If there is no way you can decline it, then it's an order, it's not a request. And a promise is one which is made with the intention of keeping it. And if you're making a promise, if I'm making a promise without any intention of keeping it, that's unethical. So apart from being low quality. And the nice thing about commitment, as opposed to expectations, is expectations are held by one person. Commitments are held by two people. So the person who made the request, the person who's making this And in order to work, you have to have a clear criteria for fulfillment. A high quality request is one where it's clear when the request is fulfilled. In fact, the whole of contract theory, any contract you've ever signed, is based on this idea that we're making a high quality request, making it ultra clear what we want, and you are choosing to say yes to that, or you're going to negotiate saying this term is not acceptable to me. But once you've done that, you have a high quality commitment. So this is one of the frameworks that's really helped me in my life, where if I've made a commitment to come here, I will show up on time and I will be there fully present. It's a high quality commitment I've made to BIT for this workshop. Now, if I suddenly, disappear, Rupa madam has to call me, Somek, where are you? 30 minutes has gone by, no Somek. That is a low quality promise, right? Low quality commitment. So very important thing for my life is if I've given a time and if I've not shown up, you should be very worried about my safety, because if I'm alive and well, I should have been there. It's a high quality promise I make. And I invite people to make the same kind of commitments in their life. It changes the relationships you have with each other. Actually, let me see. Any comments on this from anybody? The big idea here is stop using the word expectations and start using the word commitment. Then it becomes a two-way dialogue. Those are any reflections?
Agree with you.
Okay. Let's see a book recommendation. Visual engineers chat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So we've kind of completed the journey of this framework. I'll just say that this is just, there are three kinds of decisions: prudential, ethical, and legal. Prudential decisions are what we focused on, things that are good for you practically. Ethical decisions are those that are right for you, morally right. And here we think about what is our personal ethical code and our team ethical code. And there's a whole framework. Ethics for the Real World is a very nice book in this area to read, and I'll add it to my deck. And the intersection of this is values. The 6 elements of decision quality: values gets you into the ethics space. And legal is, it's about coercion. Like where are you going to force people to do something against their will, and if they don't, you will lock them up or take away their property. And that's a whole other thing. We didn't talk about it very much here, but there's a whole design of voluntary social systems. How do you minimize coercion? That also is a big field of decision making. And in a sense, when you're in a company, you'll have some intersection with legal, because you're always working in an environment of laws and regulations. How do you comply with them? How do you go beyond the laws and comply with your own ethical code? And that completes the picture of decision making. I'll just end with two things. One is, so this field, I've talked about decision intelligence. What do I mean by that? I am talking about a decision analysis layer interfacing with machine learning, data science, and experimentation, and sitting on top of product decision intelligence. This is where I should change this slide a little bit. And we focus on the human side of decision making. So the difference between data science and product decision intelligence. By the way, I should the I had this is where I add this layer on top of Apple's product management team in the commerce division, and we look at different areas. But this could work in pretty much any product company, a product decision intelligence layer. Then data science and machine learning, if you look at what's the difference between this and decision intelligence, data scientists will ask questions like, how do you connect data to the metrics of value? On the right, we ask, what are the metrics of value? And it's not that data scientists can't ask that, but the product decision intelligence people own that question. Then the data scientists will generally talk about accuracy, because that's important in the data world. Whereas in decision intelligence, we're dealing with uncertainty. We're dealing with situations where there is no data. So the focus is not on accuracy, it's on credibility and comparability. On the left, we're asking what's the objective function. On the right, we're asking, are our values represented in the objective function? On the left, we're asking what's the provenance of data, which means how reliable is this data that you're getting it, where's it coming from? On the right, we're asking about provenance of forecasts, which is how reliable are is the knowledge of the people who are giving it? Are they experts in that area? On the left, we're asking where is the data telling us to focus? On the right, what data will change our decision? On the left, we're asking what systems should be instrumented to get the data we need. On the right, we're asking what instrumentation is strategic to our decisions. Now, we also differ from generalist product managers in the sense that generalist product managers will write a business requirement document for their product. Decision intelligence product managers will write the business requirement doc for the decision product, the data product, which will help you make better decisions. On the left, the generalist product manager will contribute to and communicate decision architecture. On the right, the decision intelligence PM is going to build the foundational decision architecture for key strategic product decisions. Both will partner very heavily to evaluate the product before it is funded. And on the left, we ship the product to customers. On the right, we ship the decision product to internal stakeholders. On the left, we focus on engineering, delivery, and monitoring. On the right, we identify key metrics and KPIs. And that's kind of the role that we're building here, decision intelligence. And I have some suggested readings. This is an article on childbirth where I used decision analysis when my 2 children were born. And it's a guide I've written for anybody going through hospital births. This will help you with hospital decisions. Most people don't realize they have many decisions to make because the doctors will not tell you, they'll just do them. So if you know this, then you can navigate, think about what you want for your child's health and navigate that experience. A colleague of mine wrote this article on prostate cancer, which he navigated with decision analysis. And this is an article of a time I helped a friend with facing COVID. This is kind of the Shruti case that I talked about yesterday. This goes a little bit in detail in that. And this is my teacher of decision analysis, Professor Ron Howard, and the book he wrote, which I recommend very strongly. I'll add another book recommendation in this deck as well. But yeah, and I'll add some more extended readings as well. So open house, any questions? This kind of brings me to the close of my material. Questions, comments, reflections. If you didn't like something, please tell me. If you like something, it's totally open house.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead. Dr. Vijay, go ahead.
In one of the earlier questions through poll, you posed there B is greater than A, that is good decision, but bad outcome will negate that decision or what. But most of the time, good decision leading to an unexpected or unacceptable outcome will have a chance for us to retrospectively look into the other things which are involved in the outcome rather than decision alone. Whereas why we should not rule out that B greater than A, though A is not acceptable, is that we can we need not go back to change the B, that is decision, because we know that it is a good decision, but resulted in unexpected or unacceptable outcome A. Now, so we always have a chance to retrospectively look into the process involved between B and A. Whereas if I rule out that, okay, B is less than A, that is B is not a good decision, but we have come up with a good or bad outcome. In such a case, we don't have a chance to look into the process at all. Directly will tell that your decision was wrong. Okay, opening decision itself is wrong. So as an engineer, always we stick to a good decision. Deliberately we don't avoid a good decision or ignorance or arrogance, okay, ruling apart all those. If B, I know it is a good decision, I take that route. But in spite of that, if I get a bad outcome, okay, always I have a chance to learn that there are some other aspects which are involved, so that I can look and learn into those aspects such that the next outcome can be a probably improved one. So all these outcomes, I don't know, I was often on the deliberations because I could not attend continuously. Probably you might have touched upon that also. The partial failures and partial success. How do you account for this to investigate or to validate your decision? All the products at the end output need not be totally successful or totally failure. It could be a partial one.
So, right.
There comes,
So I'm,
there comes the term reliability associated with the probability.
okay, so
These
you've
are
been making many comments
comments.
there. I'm sorry you missed some part of the workshop because we talked a lot about this. So I'm going to ask anybody wants to respond to him. We made a fundamental distinction, right? Dr. Rajamani, do you want to respond? I think you and I talked about this at length.
I think there are some points he has mentioned nicely. I think one can reflect on them. Thank you.
Okay, so the point I want to make is his question is what happens if you get learning? And learning is always welcome, okay? But the learning cannot make a good decision a bad one. And that is a very important point because the quality of the decision has to be determined before the outcome is evident. After the outcome, our thinking is corrupted. It's like, oh, yeah, it sucks. It's something bad happened. So whatever you're learning is helpful for the next decision. Not, it doesn't make a good decision a bad one, and it doesn't make a bad decision a good one. Okay, and it is very, very hard to tell if somebody else's decision was a good or bad one because you have to get into that person's head.
Yeah,
I don't know how to
exactly.
do that.
Yes.
Right. So we can't do that. So we cannot judge other people's decisions. We can only judge our own decisions. And the best we can do is follow a structured process and think through things. So I would say, Dr. Vijay, that it's totally welcome, and we should be continuously learning, but not to validate our decision. It is to make the next better decision. You can validate the outcome. That is fine, but use the correct language. Your outcome is good or bad, and you want to talk about, that is perfectly fine. But you cannot validate your decision. That is very important. Okay, from the outcome. That is one point. Then you talked about the reliability of the probability. That is another very interesting topic. There is no meaning to probability if you're going to talk about the reliability of the probability, because now it's a second order probability. That is why we stick to one number. That's why the probability rule is there, that one probability is a complete expression of what you believe. And if you're not willing to do that, then we can't help you with decision analysis, because then what you're talking about is not interpretable. Nobody can understand what it means. So it's like saying, oh, there's a 60% chance it's going to rain tomorrow in Bengaluru, and there's a 40% chance that 60% is correct. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. If you think it's 24% chance of rain, just say that. Or if it's 60%, it is 60%. That's it. It's a complete expression of probability. So when we do reliability engineering, probability is a sufficient concept to talk about reliability. In fact, we did a lot of the inference yesterday. The idea of a machine, like let's say there's a defective machine, and how do you know if what you're seeing comes from a defective pile or the good pile? Well, then you have to think about the prior. What is the distribution? Then you have to see that given the prior is good, what is the chance of seeing a defective unit there? And given it's not good, what is the chance? And then you see something which is defective, you can tell which lot it is versus not. That's an inference you can do with the generic tree flip spreadsheet I gave yesterday. So we have very powerful tools for having those conversations. But reliability or probability is not one of our distinctions. Okay. Other reflections? I know we're almost at time. We are at time, but
Okay, thank you.
open house. Sure. Other thoughts? We've covered a lot of ground. We've covered very deep philosophical topics, short examples of all of them. If you want to reflect on what are you taking back, you can type in the chat also if you're uncomfortable talking. But please share. And I'm also adding some more resources for you at the end. I'll show it to you in a moment. I know it's lunchtime for many, so any last comment? But so I've added some more books here. So this book is a free ebook. I still recommend this one because this has much more updated language. And this is coming from Professor Ron Howard, who created the field of decision analysis. But this is also a very helpful resource made by this is written by two of my friends, Peter McNamee and John Solana, and it's freely available as an ebook. And this is a book on ethics. And I also added a link to an article I wrote on product pricing strategy that uses decision analysis. So you'll see some useful tools, some analytical tools called tornado diagrams in there. So yeah, with that, other reflections, thoughts, you can type in the comments. Maybe can we end with one line from everybody? What was your biggest takeaway? Just type in the chat. And maybe some of you can speak. Maybe my friend Sojan on the spot, if he's still here.
Overall, today session we get idea how what's the importance of a decision, how to take a decision, and what's the difference with strategic and decision, and where they're going to use, along with the placement, how they expecting that decision. All the things we explain very nicely with using real word. Whenever we are going to explain for the students, we get some idea, some simple example based on that, how to communicate, how to explain, how to understanding the students for decision. We get today session overall from 3 hours. This is my side experience.
Thank you, Rupa madam. Thank you. Dr. Rajamani, yes, sorry to disappoint you. Hard mathematical tools was yesterday, and I'll get into that some more tomorrow.
Yesterday I missed this thing probably because this is very general talk and general discussions, and we can read in many even general talks and things. But I wanted anyhow my requirement was different, but it gave me some idea that there are structured decision making processes are available. But it was too general for me and too philosophical. Maybe my setup thinking was different from you. I'm a pure scientist, maybe, and you're all HR people and things like that in general big companies. Maybe your ideas are different. I wanted actually numbers and some figures, diagram. Probably you might have had yesterday. I missed it. Thank you. Sorry for taking my point to you.
No, thank you for
That's why I
sharing
mentioned that book.
Yeah.
That book is so good. That Benjamin and Cornell, he has, for civil engineers, he used only civil engineering data from all over the reports of the US. That kind of books are not available in India for many engineering professionals. They use only that pure mathematical books, which are not so useful. Such kind of books are written for different engineers. It will be so good. That's what I wanted to mention. Thank you.
That is great. So just I just saw in the chat somebody will email the. I think the YouTube link was emailed. So before tomorrow, if you are coming for tomorrow's session, I'll do very deep dive on mathematics tomorrow. So if you would please watch the YouTube video today, that will be very helpful because then you will have the foundation for tomorrow's conversation. Otherwise, it will be very hard for you to follow the math. So we did 3 hours of deep dive in probability yesterday. And second is I'm not in the HR profession. I'm nothing against the HR profession. I am in a science profession, actually, in terms of inference. So science, uncertainty is the language of science. So whatever you're seeing today, I would encourage you not to discount it because that gives you, without the philosophy, you cannot have science. Because we have created havoc in science, in especially medical science, because of a lack of a philosophical foundation. So that will be my response to that comment. So encourage you to see it from that perspective as well. But yeah, if you watch the video, then you might have some fun in tomorrow's session. Any other reflections? Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to the. So just to mention for tomorrow, the goal is to keep it open-ended. So those who have tried the homework from yesterday's session, and Dr. Rajamani, you'll see the homework there too. That will give you a lot of good questions to ask, and I'll also have some material I can get into in some very big advances in statistics that have changed how we engage with probability. So I'll get into some of that, and I'll get into inferential statistics, specifically A/B testing, these kinds of things. So if people have interest, then tomorrow, 2 hours, we will go deep dive. And I'll also keep more space for open-ended explorations. So, Dr. Rajmani, maybe Rupa Madam, can you email it to him?
Yeah, sir, we already, those are registered participants. You already emailed yesterday itself in the afternoon itself around 1:30. The respective email. What you shared, PPT presentation, the slides, and also we shared the YouTube links also. Sir, Rajamani, sir, you please open your mail, yesterday mail. There you already sent YouTube link. Rajamani, sir?
Hello.
Sir, you registered, no?
No, today only I came. Actually, Ashwat sent me today only that link. Yesterday I could not, react very much. I mean, like I was, I wanted to, and that's why I sent yesterday. Today he sent me the link. I joined. Sorry, yesterday I missed it. But title was very interesting to me. That's why I wanted to join. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I'll send, sir, Somik, sir, after the maybe within 2 o'clock today and yesterday, both video links we are going to send Rajamani, sir, and material.
Dr. Rupa, madam, we have received, madam. Yesterday we have received. Is Dr. Vinay here?
Yeah. You
yesterday due to some network issue, I could not log in properly, so I was able to